our September 17th council meeting for Eureka City Council. Can we start the meeting with roll call, please?
Mayor Seaman?
Here.
Councilmember Castellano?
Here.
Councilmember Messner is absent tonight. Councilmember Arroyo?
Here.
Councilmember Allison is absent tonight. Councilmember Burgell? Here.
Thank you. Will you join me, please, for Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Mr. City Attorney, do we have a report out of closed session?
Mayor, no final actions were taken in closed session.
Thank you very much. So we have quite a bit on our mayor's announcements today, and I am excited about all of it. And we'd like to start, Supervisor, Councilperson Arroyo will read a proclamation.
So this proclamation is in recognition of Keith Mclaury, and if those who are here for it would please come on up. These are dear friends and colleagues and loved ones of Keith. Thank you so much for being here. In recognition of Keith Mclaury, September 2019, whereas the City of Eureka has made a significant commitment to the creation of the Mclaury Trail and the Waterfront Trail, and whereas the Humboldt Trails Council has become a leading voice advocating for local trails and a source of trail information for members of the community, and whereas the Fortuna Senior Hiking Group, with significant participation from residents of Eureka, has offered wonderful opportunities for community members to explore the county on foot, and whereas Keith Mclaury committed countless hours as a volunteer trail steward, assisting with invasive species removal, trail maintenance, trash pickup, and much more at Cooper Gulch, the Mclaury Trail, and the Waterfront Trail North, and whereas Keith Mclaury assisted with the coordination of the Mclaury volunteers, and developed and maintained the website for the Humboldt Trails Council as a volunteer. And whereas Keith organized many of the hikes for the Fortuna Senior Hiking Group, and whereas Keith passed away suddenly and unexpectedly on Wednesday, August 14th, 2019. Now, therefore, I, Natalie Arroyo, on behalf of the Eureka City Council, do hereby recognize and thank Keith Mclaury for his generous contributions to the Eureka community in support of trails and opportunities for citizens to explore our county on foot. With this acknowledgement of gratitude also goes our sincere and heartfelt sadness at Keith's passing and a deep sense of loss.
Does anybody want to say anything?
Susan's going to sign it real quick for you.
Yeah, please.
Hi, Karen Underwood from the Humboldt Trails Council and also the Senior Hiking Group. So I knew Keith on both kinds of trails, and his loss is profound, and we're really honored that you are offering this certificate of appreciation to his family tonight. So thank you very much, and his loss will be deeply felt.
Thank you so much. And I just want to say a couple of words about Keith as well. I'm on the board of the Humboldt Trails Council, and it was a pretty majestic song. And I was just so grateful to Keith as a volunteer, always abundantly generous with his time and patient and detailed in his explanations and enthusiastic, and so many of these traits are something that I think of when I think of him. So I'm grateful that he was such a dedicated volunteer for us and such a dedicated friend to all of you. So I will give this the paper copy of the proclamation to whomever would like to pass it on to Keith's family.
Lovely turnout. I am going to go next, actually, to the Film Commission and a proclamation on their behalf, and I will be reading that one. Whereas filmmakers and production companies have been bringing movies to the Redwood region for over 20 years, actually over 100 years, just the Film Commission has for over 20 years. Whereas the Humboldt Del Norte Film Commission today attracts approximately 25 productions a year, earning Redwood Region an average of just over $1.4 million directly and $4 million indirectly from visiting productions. And whereas the Film Commission is made up of a staff of 2 people, Cassandra Hesseltine, Film Commissioner, and Nate Adams, Marketing and Assistant Operations Manager, sometimes called Deputy. Whereas the Film Commission was nominated for Outstanding Film Commission for the 6th Annual Location Manager Guild International Awards to be announced in Santa Monica on September 21st. And whereas they were nominated for Outstanding Service for going above and beyond during the filming of Disney's Wrinkle in Time, a production that brought in approximately $100,000 for each day they visited Humboldt County, including in the Eureka Sequoia Park. Now therefore I, Mayor Susan Seaman, on behalf of the Eureka City Council, do hereby recognize the superb efforts and skills exhibited and recognized by our local film commission, and wish them our congratulations for being nominated for this prestigious award.
Susan's trying to get you that deputy film commission title, isn't she? Badge. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you all for this. We really appreciate it, and we're pretty excited to represent Humboldt County and Santa Monica this weekend as one of 5. So it's pretty exciting. Do you want to say something?
That is, would you like to say anything?
She's always the public face. It's fine.
That,
With your new-
and
with your new
that's
title?
why she's the director.
I'll defer to the director.
So I would like to say that this was just a really great opportunity to recognize an organization that does so much for this community, not only bringing in direct money and tourism, but making memories that people can come back and revisit. So when things like Star Wars is filmed here, or Jurassic Park, or E.T., which is in Del Norte County, but it's still really close. It brings us into the mind of people all over the world, and it's part of the magic of living in Humboldt County. So thank you so much. Good luck. Whether you win or lose, you're a winner in our books.
Thank you. Thank you.
And the last proclamation we have is for Good Neighbor Week, and that's going to be read by Councilman Burgell.
So, City of Eureka Proclamation in recognition of Good Neighbors Week, September 22nd, 29th. Hope you all have your plans, by the way, for this week. Again, I'll mention the date, September 22nd to 29th, 2019. Whereas a sense of community is nurtured and expressed in our neighborhoods, where we give each other an opportunity to feel part of something. And whereas neighbors who know and look out for each other see significant benefits in the areas of crime prevention and disaster recovery. And whereas neighbors are accessible groups of people who can band together and advocate to address issues specific to their most immediate geographic needs. And whereas it has been reported that as many as 1/3 of people living in the United States say they do not know a single neighbor by name. Wow. And whereas former U.S. Surgeon General Vivek H. Murthy identified social isolation as one of our nation's most pernicious public health menaces, alongside gun violence and opioid addiction. And whereas in recognition of the importance of fostering compassion and respect for our neighbors, the United States Congress and President Jimmy Carter proclaimed the first National Good Neighbor Day in 1978. Of course, it was him. Now, therefore, I, Kim Burgell, on behalf of the Eureka City Council, do declare the week of September 22nd to 28th Good Neighbor Week and call upon the people of Eureka and neighboring communities, as well as interested groups and organizations, to observe the week by reaching out and getting to know your neighbors. And the mayor will be receiving this.
I know. I didn't think to invite anybody. I don't know. Like a neighbor. I know. But I did really want to make sure that we made this official because, as the proclamation mentioned, being a good neighbor is incredibly important, and we're really excited to see there's a lot of activity that is already planned for the upcoming week. So I'll give you guys a little heads up. That does not mean there aren't things that you could do. You could do something as simple as write a thank you note to your neighbor. Just learn their name, because clearly there are some of us that need to learn the names of our neighbors. But on the 22nd, which is the kickoff day for Good Neighbor Week, the Bridge District will have a picnic. On the 25th, our CSET team with St. Vincent de Paul and Eureka Main Street will have a block party barbecue and resource fair with St. Vincent de Paul. On the 28th, we have a whole host of activities, including the Winsler Children's Center Neighborhood Block Party, where they're going to have police cars and fire trucks and garbage trucks and learn all about their community there. Lafayette Good Neighbor Block Party will be at Lafayette School, and they're going to go out and invite all of their neighbors to come in and meet the school. Hammond Park will be having a pie party, so anybody in that area, which is growing to be larger and larger because other neighborhoods are joining in, is welcome to come. If you want to contribute a pie, we'd all appreciate it. That's at 3 o'clock. And on the 28th, also South Eureka Neighborhood Alliance will be having a cleanup and barbecue at Highland Park. Keep Eureka Beautiful will be doing a tree planting, so if you're interested in planting trees or having a tree planted, you can find them online. And our Community Services District will be partnering with the Eureka Live Art Wall, part of the Ink People Dreammakers program, for a youth mural festival. So if you don't have anything planned on the 28th, there are certainly other things planned, but whatever you do, get out. Oh, the Fringe Festival is also going on if you want to go see some theater made by our community members. You could meet neighbors somewhere on the 28th, and I certainly hope you do. So thank you very much about that. The next thing I would like to do is we have a long-distance neighbor, a very long-distance neighbor we'd like to invite up. Mr. Pete Slater is a special visitor who is going to come up and tell us why he is involved with Eureka. He is from England, right? I don't know where in England, I just found out. So come tell us all about you and why Eureka is important to you.
Lady Mayor, ladies and gentlemen, and all you great people out there. I'm a captain of a Eureka Bowls team. Ooh.
We want to hear you.
So beam me up, Scotty. So basically, a long while ago, I joined our team. Now, our team is Crown Green Bowls. A lot of you guys won't know what Crown Green Bowls, but we played on grass with 2 bowls. The team dates back to 1958 when it first started. The name Eureka was formed due to the fact we have coal miners. Our town is a mining town, and they found a 100-foot seam of coal and called it Eureka. So that's how Eureka got its name. Eureka Park Bowls Club, which is this. We didn't have an emblem of sorts, so I went on the internet, and lo and behold, your town came up first. So I thought I'll pick on you. And I emailed Pam initially, who put me in touch with Austin. Good job he's got his name there, because for a long while I thought his name was Alison. And he was a she. until Pam told me otherwise. So we asked the town council, it must be 2 years ago now, if we could use the emblem as our home emblem, which obviously they agreed because I've got it on, which was fantastic for us. Yes, I have travelled 6,000 miles to say thank you, but the redwoods that you've got here, and a lot of you Americans take America for granted. I've been travelling to the States for the last 25 years. You have got one hell of a country. You one hell of a people. We've never met anybody nasty yet. We haven't, honest to goodness. We've visited 27 states, from Virginia, Pennsylvania, Indiana, Illinois, and we have not yet met one nasty person, which I think is absolutely amazing, because you've got to have nasty people in this country. I'm not sure if we've been really lucky. We visited, we came in on last Thursday, and we drove to Sacramento. I get this wrong, Vacaville? Yeah. Vacaville. And we stayed in Vacaville overnight and then drove up to Grants Pass. Grants Pass, I fell in love with the place. The mountain, the people came down. We stayed in a motel right next to the Black Bear Diner. Wow, they don't know how to make some big dinners. Which suits me. I'm not built for running. So anyway, I digress. You give a lot out, Lady Mayor. You give a lot out. So I've actually bought some presents for you. So I'd like Pam to come and collect this if she would. It's a shirt. My nickname is Slate, short for Slater. Everybody in my town knows who I am, and they all call me Slate. So we had a shirt made for Austin. Some of you don't know that the California emblem, that there, is actually Britannia. So that is part of British history. And that's what that is there. And then underneath you've got a miner. Well, we're a mining town. You know, we're coal miners. And the only bit that doesn't work is the ships. We do have a big pond. So I'll be grateful if you could give that to.
I will.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And I've got something else for him. This is my company. We're a brewery. We're a big brewery. We own 11 breweries. We brew 1.5 million gallons of beer a week. And we employ 13,500 people, 13,500 people. So, and it is a good company. Now this beer is brand new. This is a beer that was conditioned purposely. You got a picture of the head brewer, and it's unique, as in each bottle has got its own number, unique number. The thing is, it's 7.4%. So tell your husband he needs to. Don't drink anything else after this. It's unique in another way. If you're in a bar drinking this, you can sit there and talk all night, and you could have probably 3 or 4 of these. It's when you get up. And you will say, you know, what's wrong with my legs? And then it'll catch up. So it does get you drunk from the feet upwards. But it's been specifically made. So if you'd like to give that to Austin. And then I have one
For the mayor?
for you, Lady Mayor.
I'll have her.
I wish I'd have bought lots and lots of them.
Here, can I just get a picture? Yes, please. Thank you.
And I'll email you mine.
Thank you, Bob.
That was lovely and gracious and entertaining to boot. So I don't know how great it's going to be for the people on TV. I hope they got to hear some of your story, but
So with that in mind, you know, the whole of we've got, we have a Derby League team. So we have a Wednesday League team, Thursday League team, a Friday League team, and 2 Saturday League teams. And like I say, this year we've done really well. We've done bad and good. I've just realised our Wednesday team's just been relegated to the 2nd division. But I'm the captain of the Derby League team, which has held its own in the league. The 2 Saturday sides, we've got a first team and a second team. I'm a first team player, and we came 3rd, which we just missed out on promotion this year. But my wife is wearing his top. She's young Slate.
He is called Slade, but I'm called Young Slade.
Because both my son and I are
Well,
young Slate. And like I say, my son was junior England #1.
well,
So
that's awesome. Thank you so much for coming and for telling us your story and for visiting. I hope you get to enjoy Eureka a little bit too.
well, yeah.
think-
Today was really good. I got to fish.
Excellent. You got to see a little rain, which we haven't done for a few days.
It's rain, but I did get to fish and I did catch, which means now I've caught in east, south, north, and west of America, and I caught a 50-pound. You call them bat rays,
Oh, nice.
but it broke my rod.
Sorry about that.
Anyway, thank you all so much. I'm not sure if I'll be back. Because
Well, maybe we'll
it's
get
a
over
long
there.
way to come, but you're more than welcome to come and watch us bowl.
All righty.
Thank you all so much.
Bye-bye. Excellent. Next up is Maggie Kraft. Oh, there she is. Yay, I hadn't seen you. We have a presentation from the Area 1 on Aging. Oh, that's right. Shoot.
You want me to go
Can I
Yes.
put somebody right before you so that, sorry.
between that and me anyway. That's all right.
I forgot, we have a short presentation by Sean Hicks for Bark in the Park.
Hello. All right. My name's Sean Hicks. I'm a firefighter paramedic with Humboldt Bay Fire. I've been there for about 3 years now. I'm here on behalf of Humboldt Bay Firefighters Local 652. Just wanted to ask for permission for use of Sequoia Park for our 6th annual Bark in the Park event. It's a 5K race that we've held for quite some time, 5 years now. This will be our 6th time. Every year we have a beneficiary that gets all the money that we collect. This year we selected Hum Dogs, which is a local group that's been around since 1978. they offer low-cost dog obedience training, so we're hoping to get a lot of turnout, and maybe everybody in the crowd might stop by on October 5th, 10 a.m., and run with the dog, snake, kid, or you can even walk if you're not much of a runner like you. So that's what we have for you.
Excellent.
You guys have any questions?
Does anybody have any questions about Bark in the Park? Right on. It is on the agenda. I think we'll get to that.
Great. Alrighty. October 5th. We'll see you there. Thank you.
Alrighty, thank you. Now, Ms. Kraft, I'm really looking forward to this presentation.
I don't mean this in a bad way, but I've never felt bad following anybody before here talking to you. That was a lot of fun. I was saying to Donna Wright that when you have an accent, you get to speak for longer. And
When you travel we get to speak for a minute every mile you travel.
there you go. There you go. So thank you for allowing me to come and speak today. My name is Maggie Kraft. I'm the Executive Director of the Area 1 Agency on Aging. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about some work we are doing around the issue of hoarding and invite the city to join this effort. First, some background. It is estimated that between 2 and 4% of the population have hoarding disorder. Symptoms seem to appear almost 3 times more. They're more common in older adults, but hoarding symptoms can appear as early as 10 or 11 years old. Symptoms can worsen as we age, after divorce, a death of a spouse or family member, or other personal crisis, health crisis, some traumatic event. So I looked at the population of Eureka, and that would be roughly 540 to over 1,000 people in the Eureka city limits who are coping with this issue, this disorder, and that impacts a wider number of people than just them, as you would imagine. Most people don't understand what hoarding is or the toll it takes on people with the disorder and those who love them. It's really important that we educate ourselves about the issue and learn how to help people in meaningful and supportive ways. People who hoard, there are reasons for their behavior, usually tied to really deeply held beliefs and emotions. They don't hoard because they're lazy, and they often tend to be very intelligent and or very educated people. They're not stupid. And they're also very creative. They have which is problematic sometimes because they can see something in everything, which is a great skill to have, but it can become overwhelming. They may also exhibit a relative lack of understanding of how bad their situation is. They may not see it the way other people see it. And they're very likely to have a co-occurring mental health disorder, primarily depression, which can also make it difficult to cope with the issues. They also may have social or generalized anxiety disorders. About 20% of people who hoard also have OCD, which is obsessive compulsive disorder. They're not the same thing, and you can't treat people who hoard the way you would treat people with OCD. It's a different illness. The San Francisco Task Force on Compulsive Hoarding did a report in 2009, and they reached out to a bunch of providers, government services, and they tried to estimate how much it costs the community due to compulsive hoarding and cluttering behaviors. And they didn't reach everybody, but the people they spoke to was over $1 million a year. They estimated that if they talked to everybody and talked to all the people who had this problem and and all the landlords who they didn't speak to, they estimated it would be close to $6.4 million a year, and that's in 2009 dollars. But that's a huge amount, and that's a huge place. But Humboldt County, if you bring the numbers down, we could probably estimate that it's costly. It costs landlords, it costs homeowners, it costs our government organizations who go in and deal with these situations. And I realize I have slides you want to see. So it's a big deal. It's a really big deal. We received funding from the Department of Health and Human Services, and this last year we put on, in March, we had a conference. We had over 100 people come there who came to hear 2 speakers from San Francisco talk about how to dispel myth and address the hoarding and understand the disorder. It was a great event, but we need more education, more awareness. We also, the grant helped us start support groups. And this is just information about where you can find, the conference is videotaped, and the presentation and all the handouts are on our webpage, so you can look at all of that there if you didn't get to go. The other thing it helped us do was start support groups. So we're running right now, we're continuing the groups after the grant. We're running groups for family and friends and also for people who hoard. Those groups, the people who come, we give them a book. We have these different workbooks that they work through. And the group for people who hoard is very effective. We have 10 plus people who come on a regular basis, and they're really grappling with this issue and trying to address it. It also is supporting the development of the task force. Right now, the task force is meeting quarterly. We've had 2 meetings. We're focusing more on education right now, trying to bring everybody up to speed in terms of understanding the disorder, what works, what doesn't, sharing resources and experiences. And what we'd like to do is eventually move toward creating other needed elements of a successful task force. The next meeting is October 16th. If anybody would like to attend that meeting, it will be at our offices on 7th Street. Hoarding is really a public safety issue. It threatens the health and safety of the people who are living in the home and also the people who live in the neighborhood. You're talking about Good Neighbors Day, and I keep thinking about those of us in neighborhoods where there are people who have this disorder. It's challenging. It attracts rodents and other pests. It can cause health problems, structural damage. Sometimes homes are completely a loss. And in the event of a fire, it's very dangerous to the fire department when they go in. It's dangerous. We've had people who have died in situations where the house was full of paper or combustible items. It's a huge cost, and there are things we can do locally. There are task force around the country that are starting to address this. What we need is to look at doing a collaborative group, bringing people together, and trying to figure out how we might address this in a more systematic, thoughtful way. All the academic research that looks at treatment says you need clinicians, you need somebody who can help provide the mental health support to the person, but you also need a mechanism to address it community-wide. It can't be addressed in secret, silently. You've got to bring resources in because code enforcement knows about it, law enforcement, the fire department, every time they go into a home and they help somebody up from the floor, they get to see the whole environment, and which is good because then they know what they'd be dealing with if there was a fire in that home. But it puts them at risk, and it makes it hard for EMTs to get into a home and get people out safely if they need to. So it's a big risk. These are some of the things we need to do. We'd like to do more education. We'd like to talk to more people about it. I talked about the need for mental health support. We don't have a lot of clinicians locally who want to tackle this. They may have the skill set to do it, the training using cognitive behavioral therapy, but it's complicated. But the other thing I have to say is most clinicians don't realize that many of the people they're treating for other issues, people who have had extreme childhood trauma, different things, if they ever ask them about this, they might be surprised how many people are hoarding as a way of coping with some of the trauma in their life. So it's something that people don't ask, and therapists aren't in people's homes. They don't see what's going on in your home. So this is what ultimately a good task force would be doing. We would be working together on cases, working with home assessments and in ways that focus on a solution, not just the hammer or the. I have so many people who rent space and are in fear of the next inspection coming in to tell them they need to move things around. There are people, this is a disorder. It causes a lot of anxiety, and they're waiting for their landlord to come in and inspect. And we need to be more supportive of them, their mental health, and also their living environment and the safety of the people who live in apartments around them. So those are some of the things we'd like to do. I would really encourage you to join us, encourage your staff to join us and address this public health issue and find a way to do it better and do it as a committee of people. So I brought you copies, a couple copies. This can also be found online, but I thought you might have some department heads who might want to look through this, and I've got a couple for it to leave. And while I'm here, I also wanted to mention a couple other things that you'll be seeing coming up soon. We have our older adults needs survey going out October 1st. We're blanketing basically Humboldt and Delaware County, reaching out to find out what are the needs, what are the issues that seniors are facing, and how can we as a community better address it. We're going to be taking this information, compiling it by zip code, by community, so we'll be able to give you a report if you want one about what people are saying in your zip codes and in general in the county. It's going to be online, hard copies everywhere. So please encourage people that you meet to, hey, if you have a complaint or concern, the money's limited, but we need to hear what people say about how we can be efficient with it. Our senior information guide will be coming out brand new in January. We do 12,000 copies of that, and 12,000 people roughly around here use that. And it's used in most organizations that serve older adults, so that will be there. Our volunteer driver program, I know you've heard about this. I wanted to just update you, and actually you support this program. So we're going gangbusters every day. Every time I go out and talk about it, we have more people call us needing rides. That's not exactly what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping for more people to volunteer. It's easy to volunteer. You sign up to do a ride when you're able. You don't sign up if you're not able. You just do it here and there, and it's fine. People are very, very happy. The people you help are incredibly happy and fun to talk to, actually. Most of the people have a lot of good times when they're driving. We also especially need volunteers in the Eel River Valley. I went to Fortuna last night and mentioned that to them. And we're planning to extend to Willow Creek. We can go anywhere there are people who will drive. That's the thing about a volunteer driver program. You can go anywhere that you have volunteers. It's great. So we encourage people to look at that. We're also working on our home share program. And we're rebooting this. We're going to do much more hands-on service. What it is we're trying to match people who have extra space in their home after they've cleared out all their stuff. And they want to rent a room to somebody who needs a room. And people think students, but I have to tell you, there's a lot of seniors, older adults who, for a variety of reasons, have lost their housing, can't afford a home, and can't afford a one-bedroom apartment with what we have here. It's very competitive, as you know. You're working on a housing element to address some of those issues. This is another piece of that can address that for certain people who are looking for somebody to move in and live. It could be older adults, it could be students, it could be anybody, but it's about filling those homes with people rather than just empty spaces. And it will help those who cannot afford a caregiver. You know, family lives out of the area and they say, I'm really worried about mom living alone. I think she should move into assisted living. Well, mom doesn't want to do that. Mom wants to stay home. And if she had somebody there shopping, making sure she's eating, not being a caregiver, but just being a roommate, then it could make a huge difference. So we're looking forward to that. We need the homes before the people. So if you have a home, if you're thinking about it, if you're an empty nester and you're ready to have somebody in the house that might be a little more mature than your children, I don't know, check it out. And we're doing a little fundraiser for that. You know the drill, how that works. That will be out in Mad River. And then again, the next task force meeting is on the 16th. So I invite people to come learn more about it. We need to educate ourselves about this disorder so we can help people who are addressing it. And I call people who hoard. I don't call them hoarders because we're all people first. It's a disorder. It needs help. So thank you.
Thank you. I do want to say I was in San Jose, we're talking about homeless issues throughout the state, and the home share program came up several times, so I was very happy to say that we were starting to implement it here, and it was really exciting. And when they talked about it, students, which was when we first started talking about it, that's what it was, I mentioned that the meetings, we saw as many seniors coming to look for housing as students. So you don't necessarily have to be
No.
intergenerational, although I love intergenerational stuff. Does anybody else have?
Well, and I was going to say, intergenerational is 50 and 70. You realize 50-year-olds and 70-year-olds are in a different generation. So I think we all think everyone over a certain age is those old people, but we're all, every 20 or so years, it's a different batch of folks. So you could be a 50-year-old and live with a 70-year-old, and that works too.
That is very true. Also, for the senior driving program, I moved my mom up here 6 months a year just to do that. So she's waiting for the 24th for your training. And
Oh, great.
she's like, I have to wait a whole month.
I can't believe you recruited her from out of state.
Southern California.
Okay,
Just-
we'll take her. She knows how to drive.
She's a great driver.
Right.
Anybody
Okay.
else have any questions?
I just wanted to thank you for bringing this forward, Maggie. I just really appreciate all the work that you do, and I'm grateful that you are moving forward with the home share. That's going to be an amazing gift for our community, so.
We are going
just
to,
thank you.
I think we're going to apply for a St. Joe's community grant. I was just informed that those are up because we need it. We need some money to put someone out there who's going to go and just recruit folks for this. So we're going to look toward that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. No, not until we get to it, because we're going to do it. Oh, for the public comment. No, because we'll do it here. The hearings will happen. Okay. So next on our agenda is public comment. Public comment is for speakers who are wishing to address the council. You may submit a speaker card. Once the speaker cards have been gone through, we'll ask if there are any additional speakers. You're allowed 3 minutes. And who is our first speaker?
We have one name, James Graham.
Good evening, council. I don't have too much to say tonight. My kids are in Head Start now, and I went to a parents' meeting, and they talked about this and that, and they wanted suggestions on the chalkboard. So, you know me, I put needle awareness in the playground, even though they're only 4 to 5 years old. There needs to be some program out there to where they know not to touch them, to tell an adult. And they do sweep the playground, but, they might not find one or something. So I was just going to pass that on. I know somebody here is a teacher. I think it's Kim. And I thought that was a good idea, maybe for somebody to talk about, like, the event you had, ma'am. And the only thing other thing I have to say is I noticed when I was coming into town, well, I always notice it, right there before Wabash, there's a sign, "Welcome to Old Town Eureka and the City of Eureka," and it says, I think it says 1 mile ahead, which the sign's really terribly dirty. You can't even see how many miles ahead, and there's like 10 transients around it, and it's got all the plaques on it, the Rotary Club and all the clubs, and tourists are coming in there, and that's what they see, 10 transients around it. And I realize you can't kick them off of there because that's apparently public property, but I don't know, something's got to be done about that. It doesn't make the city of Eureka look very good. So that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comment? Come on up.
Good evening. I came by, it's really encouraging to see some of the really cool stuff going on around Eureka. I'm glad to be here. I came in today to talk about energy code here in Eureka. I'm a homeowner here in Eureka and a business owner, also based out of Eureka. Much of my work has to do with the third-party verifications involved in state energy code. Right now, I've been really encouraged because Arcata, though all of our AHJs, our building departments, have adopted 2016 Energy Code. There's been very sparse enforcement of the third-party measures written into state energy code. And really those measures are very important, and they're what make energy code what it is. So you have, when you change a furnace, when you build a new home, you have a third party come in and test the ductwork to see how much leakage there is. Typically, that's 20% of your heat is just going right out the window. It's supposed to be 5% or less. I've seen it all over the county, working in HVAC for years, and I see it in Eureka plenty. As Arcata's been enforcing energy code, starting about this last month, honestly, and I'm hoping that Eureka kind of also steps up and starts enforcing the current state energy laws. There are, I've talked with Brian and had a great conversation with him. I know that his intention is to definitely do the right thing. And I think that what our building department needs is for y'all to communicate with them and say that that energy code enforcement is a priority. I know that our inspection department they have a lot on their plate, and it's a small jurisdiction, but I really hope that Eureka, steps up and starts enforcing energy code soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we have any other 4 items not on the agenda? Come on up.
Good evening, council members. My name is Bob Santilli. I'm a board member with St. Vincent de Paul. We oversee the dining center on 3rd Street for the homeless. And we're having a block party next week, September 25th, from 11 to 3. And I'm pretty sure all of you are aware, as Officer LaFrance made sure that the government officials were alerted to the event, and we hope that you will all attend. At this point, we have over 35 nonprofit and government agencies that'll be present with all kinds of representation in regards to emergency services and community support of health care, food, shelter, rehabilitation, recovery, even pet care. And Rocky's Barbershop and the House of Nice have kindly offered their services too for some hairstylings, and a few other things are going to be going on. And we look at it as a one-stop shop for the displaced community to seek out services they may not be aware of or have access to. And we're, being that it's the inaugural Community Resource Fair, we hope to build upon it from what happens next week. So again, we welcome all of you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Could you repeat the time and location again for everyone?
It's 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. and we're at 35 West 3rd Street. So Charlotte over at Eureka Main Street was kind enough to get a permit to block off 3rd Street between A Street and was it Continental?
Commercial.
Commercial. Yeah. I've only been here less than 2 years, so I'm still learning stuff. But yeah, and yeah, so you're welcome to come anytime, even before that. Maybe watch the activities going on as we set up. Be nice to meet our kitchen staff that work tirelessly every day and see what they go through on a daily basis just to prepare a nutritious meal.
I hope you get a good turnout. I think that most of us that have the time will be there.
And the ESET unit of the police force is kind enough to barbecue for us as well. So, a lot of good food.
Thank you very much.
Sorry about that. I forgot we were in public comment and not mayor's announcements, since you had mentioned it earlier. So sorry for the faux pas, everyone.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comment? All right. See, I've never seen people get claps just for leaving. That's amazing. Although I'm sure they would probably sometimes if we left. Let's move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the consent calendar. Oh, no, public hearings is next. That's right. So we are going to start with the extension of moratorium on digital signs and off-premise signs. And we have, I'm sorry, Kristen, what is your title? Is it Deputy Director? Senior Planner Raymond here to give a presentation. Getz, sorry. I'm so sorry. I knew that. I know. I'm having a day.
So thank you, Mayor and Council, and good evening. As Mayor mentioned, we are here to talk about the extension of the moratorium on digital signs and off-premise signs in the coastal zone. Little bit of background information about moratoriums, a little refresher course for you. The California Government Code allows city councils to adopt interim ordinances or urgency ordinances when there are uses that may conflict with either contemplated general plans or zonings or existing. The Government Code allows the moratorium to be adopted for an initial 45-day period with or without a notice public hearing. That requires a 4/5 vote of the council, and prior to the expiration of that 45-day period, council may extend the urgency ordinance for an additional 10 months and 15 days. And subsequently after that, they may extend it for another 1-year period. Adoption of related ordinances automatically terminates any existing moratorium, and at this point in time in this moratorium, we are at the point in time where we would need to extend for 1 more year. Timeline, up to date, 2015 to 17, the city held stakeholder meetings and met with Economic Development Committee and the Design Review Committee. In February, February 2018, we did a digital sign survey. And in April, City Council provided direction to staff to create zone-specific regulations for digital signs. And then staff continued to work on the general plan update and the zoning code update between April and September of 2018. And then in September of 2018, Council did adopt a 45-day urgency ordinance on digital signs and off-premise signs, both in the inland portion of the city and in the coastal zone. Council also extended that urgency ordinance for 10 months and 15 days in October. And on June 21st, 2019, the inland zoning code was adopted, and the inland moratorium expired, but the coastal zone moratorium remained. On September 6th of this year, just earlier this month, the moratorium interim report, which is required by California Government Code, was drafted, and it was posted on the city's website. And then this evening, council is being asked to adopt an extension of the coastal zone urgency ordinance for a period of 1 more year or 12 months. Just as a reminder, the inland zoning code was updated and adopted. The moratorium expired, coastal moratorium remained. Staff continues to work on the local coastal program, which will contain the regulations for signs in the coastal zone. We have discussed moving forward with a separate sign ordinance in the coastal zone. We've also discussed that with local coastal commission staff, and if necessary, we will go ahead and bring that forward to you at some time in the future. And we are hoping to be able to complete the LCP, at least have it adopted by council within hopefully 6 months. what happens if council does not decide to adopt the extension? Beginning September 19th, day after tomorrow, property owners and businesses in the coastal zone could submit applications for digital signs, and those could be in locations where council has already determined that no digital signs should be allowed. Council also indicated that digital signs should not be allowed in Old Town, and without a moratorium, building owners could apply for ministerial permits for digital signs in the Old Town area. And lastly, property owners and businesses could submit applications for digital billboards despite council direction to staff that the upcoming zoning code not allow digital billboards. So staff's recommendation for you this evening is to hold a public hearing and then waive reading and read by title only Bill number 971 CS, which will extend the interim ordinance for a period of 12 months. And I am happy to answer any questions that I can.
Okay, it's a public hearing, so we are going to open comment for the public hearing. Do we have anybody here to speak on that? Seeing none, I will bring it back and we will have comments and then we will continue the public hearing after that. Yes, ma'am? Right?
Comments first?
Yeah, comments before we close. Okay, so one thing about this is that we would need 4 council members to vote on it, and as you can see, we have only 3. So we are going to continue this public hearing until tomorrow at 6 p.m. And I think that's all I need to do, right?
Yes, and that continuation will be in room 207 here on the second floor of City Hall, as this room is being used for an Economic Development Commission meeting.
Okay, did y'all get that? If you're dying to know what is going to happen, at the moment we decide, 6 o'clock, 207. And with that, thank you so much. I'm sorry I mixed up your name, and we'll see you next time. Well, now we're going to move on to the consent calendar. I have no notes to pull anything, so can I have a motion to?
I move approval of the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Alrighty, can we get a vote?
Unanimous yes vote. Councilmember Messner and Allison absent. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. All right. Now we are going to move on to ordinances and resolutions. I'm going to make a slight change to the agenda. We're going to move item C3, which is the Humboldt County Administrative Complex, to the first item in this part of the agenda, because I believe County Administrator Amy Nelson is here to present
I
this.
was wondering if I should just say, yeah. Wasn't sure.
Would you like to come up?
No,
Oh, no?
Kristen Getz will present first.
You're going to present
Mayor.
this too? Oh, I'm
Yes.
sorry.
I'm still here.
I knew she was going to be here. I didn't realize you were presenting this part.
Yes. Good evening again, Mayor and Council. So before you this evening is a request for a general plan conformance finding for a proposed Humboldt County Administrative Complex. And we're here in Eureka, kind of in the northerly portion of the city, and zooming in a little bit closer, going closer to 5th Street, 4th and 5th Street here in Eureka. City Hall is located here. Humboldt County Courthouse is located here. And in 2015, the Board of Supervisors authorized an application for grant funding for development of the Humboldt Community Corrections Reentry Resource Center, or HCCRRC. The center would be a small, minimum security, 44-bed facility, and it's designed to assist inmates to successfully re-enter society. And the center would also house SWAP and probation, and as well as a few other types of services. The Reentry and Resource Center is proposed to the east of the existing correctional facility at the Humboldt County Courthouse on the gravel parking lot. So this is the gravel parking lot on the east side of the courthouse, And these drawings are from the 2015 initial study and mitigating negative declaration that was prepared by the county, and they may have changed since then, but I just wanted to give you an idea of the kinds of options that they were looking at for this particular project. So the reentry center would house or would employ 20 correctional staff. And in the initial study, it was determined that there was at least 78 parking spaces that were currently provided in the gravel parking lot. And the project would be able to provide 68 of those parking spaces in a sub-grade parking lot. The state court system leases space in the Humboldt County Courthouse from the County of Humboldt, and an agreement that they have with the County of Humboldt requires that the county provide at least 64 off-street parking spaces for the use of the court system. Those parking spaces are currently provided on the gravel parking lot and would need to be replaced if the project went forward. Since 2015, parking space construction costs have continued to increase, and so the county is starting to look at other options, and they've also thought about doing consolidated facilities, creating government complexes or government campuses. So they looked around a little bit for other locations that might be able to help accommodate the parking and maybe the co-location of complexes. And again, City Hall's here, the county courthouse is here. So they looked over on 4th Street between K and L streets. And there's currently 3 parcels that the county does not own on the south side of this block. And it's parcels that are numbered on this slide is 3, 4, and 5. Parcel number 1 is an existing off-street parking space with, or parking lot, with 15 parking spaces. And lot 2 is the public defender's office. This is a street view of that particular block, and these are the structures that are on the properties that the county is considering acquiring. So they would be purchasing and then demolishing and then developing the site. And when the County of Humboldt decides to do any one of those things inside the city limits, and the city has adopted a general plan, then the government code requires that the county request a general plan conformance from the city of Eureka. And the conformance determination is whether or not the project would conform with the adopted general plan. In this case, it's our 2040 general plan. The county is not bound by the city's determination. They could proceed with acquisition and development as proposed even if the city did not find that the project was in conformance. Or they could choose to modify the project so that it became more in conformance or in conformance with the general plan. So staff developed 3 alternatives just to use for the analysis of the general plan. The first one is just a parking lot for 35 spaces. It could be at grade or subgrade. The second one is a parking lot below with an office complex above. And the third one was a phased approach with a parking lot initially and followed by an office building at some unspecified later date. The analysis that staff did was based on the result of these alternatives. So theoretically, alternative 2 and 3 has the same result. It's a parking lot on the ground and a building above. So we've kind of combined those two. The city analyzed the draft, and I want to underline draft there. It's the draft housing element goals and policies because of the multifamily residential housing that's on the site. We also went ahead and analyzed the 2040 general plan, which supports attractive and well-designed streetscapes and buildings and parking lots. It promotes the downtown as a vibrant destination for residents and tourists. The general plan supports maximizing mixed use in the core area and reducing parking, as well as increasing reliance on multimodal transportation, and improving the aesthetics of the Highway 101 corridor along with the county courthouse. So council could decide that the project must be consistent with all of the applicable goals and policies in the general plan, or council could look at consistent or neutral findings versus inconsistent findings, and or council could also factor in the merits of both projects. So for alternative one, analyzing the project with the goals and policies in the general plan and in the draft housing element, the alternative one is more inconsistent than it is consistent with the city's general plan. Alternatives 2 and 3 are more consistent or neutral than they are inconsistent with the general plan. And then on alternative 2 and 3, if you add in the transitional services that the projects can provide, the decrease in reoffending, and the creation of the government complexes and campuses that can increase the I lost my place. I apologize. The positive aspects of the project. Thank you. So the overall community benefit of the project outweighs the loss of the housing. It is unfortunately fortunate that housing would be lost, but weighing the benefits against that loss, staff believes that the council could find that the project is in conformance with applicable policies of the general plan. And so staff is recommending that you receive a report and then make a determination as to whether or not it is in conformance with the general plan. Staff's suggested motion for you is to adopt the resolution that's contained in your staff report, and that resolution finds that alternative 2 and 3 will be most consistent with the general plan. And there is a suggested motion for you. However, when I was preparing this for you this evening, I noticed that there is an extra word in there that should be deleted. The word whether should not be included in the title of the resolution, and so there is the language if you choose to use it, and I'm happy to answer any questions that I can.
Does anybody have questions? Councilman Burgell?
So I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. So across the street, there's a state parking lot, right? And is that true?
Yes,
Yes.
it's true.
And so I know that, didn't the county try to use that space? And wasn't it, they told, or weren't they told that they weren't going to be able to? I guess I want to lay a groundwork that the county has done some work on this and looked at other areas and have been turned down, which is very frustrating.
Do we want to bring
If you can
County
answer-
Administrator Nielsen up here? Maybe she'd feel more comfortable answering the questions of what the county's already done.
Hi.
Hi. So yes, the county has reached out to the state on several occasions to utilize the EDD parking lot, and we have been turned down. We actually will be bringing an item to the Board of Supervisors, a letter to Assemblymember Wood and Senator McGuire, as well as those state agencies, requesting that they let us lease some space for parking.
And you're
So we
on-
will continue to pursue that option.
Okay, great. And you are on kind of on a timeline too, aren't you, with that?
Yes, the Resource Center project will begin about this time next year. So yes, we'll be continuing to work on that.
Okay. And then when we're talking about losing housing, I know with the city, there have been times where we've used code enforcement and people have had to move out, and those people were granted a certain amount of money to get them either an apartment, which usually that wasn't really enough, but at least to get them some kind of shelter during the interim, a transitional period. And I'm wondering if that's something that the county is going to be looking into.
So at this point in time, that is not something the county would be looking into. The termination of tenancy would occur before the county made the purchase of those 4th Street properties. What the county is doing, there's 3 things that the county is currently doing. Right now, the county is exploring purchasing the budget motel, and so we're exploring that because the state is issuing housing dollars in 2020, and so we've reached out to Senator Mcguire's office to see if we can get some more details and some assistance on the purchase of the budget motel for housing. In addition, we've had some informal conversations with Humboldt Area Foundation staff to help us make that purchase because we can't purchase that property without those funds. So we may need a little assistance because we can't afford to do that without those funds. In addition, Health and Human Services is able to provide assistance to those tenants once they've received that termination of tenancy notice. And also, the county, back in January of 2018, allocated $100,000 to the Betty Chin trailer project. And so the city hasn't requested those funds, but that has been allocated in our budget. We are carrying it over year to year until you all are ready for that.
Wonderful. And then my last question, I think you kind of answered it, but I know that there are places that, well, when we were talking about the motel moratorium a while back, and one of the things that one city, I believe it's a California city, I don't recall, but they had tied or hotel building with affordable housing, and so I was curious if there was some way that with this project, I don't know who could answer that, but if with this project, if we could tie some number of affordable housing to it, does that make sense? Similar to what we talked about with the motels?
I think I understand your question, whether or not the council could require the county to include an affordable housing component of their administrative complex. I don't believe you can. Since they can build this, they can proceed with their plans with or without the general plan conformancy.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I was just curious about that. That may be something we can talk about at a later date as negotiating and working together. So thanks so much for being here.
Do we have a Councilman Arroyo?
I have a couple.
Okay.
So, just to clarify, I know that you shared this with me, but why can't the county keep the buildings that are currently on the property there?
So the county, some of you may know that the county is in an Americans with Disabilities Act consent decree with the Department of Justice, which means that we have to bring our facilities into compliance. We need to make all of our services and facilities accessible to all. And so the county can't have housing that is not ADA accessible. The county cannot have substandard housing. So if the county purchased that, we would have to either demolish that housing or bring it up to ADA standards. And the county would prefer to, at this point in time, demolish the housing and work on these other options that I previously mentioned, such as the budget motel and assistance through Health and Human Services.
Great, and could you share a little bit about the facilities master planning process that you're going through right now and how that kind of factors into this?
Absolutely, I would love to talk about the facilities master planning process. So, the Board of Supervisors back in about 2016 said to county staff, hey, we'd really like to co-locate services. We'd really like an improved service experience for our residents. And so staff has been going along and researching opportunities for co-location of services. In the meantime, in about 2018, the board decided to engage in facility master planning services. And so that is looking at the age of our facilities and how they fare. And so far, we have a draft facilities master plan that staff is working on with our consultant, the KPA group. And the KPA group has identified that most of our facilities are in pretty poor condition. And they've also identified that the co-location of services is, pretty important for our residents and an improved experience. And it also provides for collaboration across county departments, which is also important. So the facilities master plan is exploring sites such as 2nd Street. We have sites along 2nd Street where our facilities maintenance building is and our materials testing lab. The facilities master plan is also exploring the 4th Street site that we're discussing today, where possibly an administrative complex could be. The facilities master plan is also exploring an eastern campus and a southern campus for county services in those areas as well. And so this is an endeavor to improve the experience of county services, but also to help provide some more collaboration among county departments, because we're pretty dispersed, and we occupy 80 facilities that are leased, and so we'd really like to start to bring those facilities into county, those leased facilities into county-owned facilities.
Okay, and I just have one more. So the parking math is still hard for me to fathom, because I know that you have to provide at a minimum those 78 spaces, plus there's additional spaces that people are probably using for getting to work. And so I wondered, even with this project potentially creating up to 35 spaces, what's the plan for the remaining 43? I know I've had this question from members of the public, so I feel like I have to put it to you publicly.
Absolutely. So I mentioned previously that we're going to be writing, we'll be bringing a draft letter to the Board of Supervisors that will be addressed to Senator Mclaury and Assemblymember Wood, and it's also going to call upon them to ask state agencies to be more reasonable in their requirements, such as the Judicial Council. So the Judicial Council is the state agency that we have that agreement with, in which we need to provide over 60 parking places to their staff, to the Superior Court staff. And so we'll be asking for a more reasonable agreement regarding parking, something that's probably more current.
Thank you.
Councilman Castellano.
Thank you. Let's see. Just a couple of follow-up questions. Would a letter from the city of Eureka supporting parking in that state-owned area be useful for you all to also receive, or from council?
Absolutely.
Great. And then, let's see, and just, well, I'll say more comments about that. In terms of follow-up with people who would be displaced, how long, what sort of period of time would that follow-up take place over with DHHS?
So once the property owner issues the termination of tenancy, DHHS will contact those folks immediately to see what kind of service they can provide.
I think just my question around it is, let's say at that initial time they decline services, will there be another round of follow-ups, 6 months later? Or
there would be follow-up. If they're eligible for services, the county has an obligation to make sure that we're providing that level of service that they need.
All right. Any other questions? Okay, so I'll open it up for public comment now. Do we have any public comment on this? Seeing none, I will bring it back to the council and invite comments. Councilman Arroyo.
Well, I will not pretend that I love this plan necessarily, although I think the end goal of parking with administrative complex and hopefully improve services to reduce recidivism and improve people's transition back into the community will be for the general public good more than, perhaps the buildings that are there right now. I would just encourage the county to move as expeditiously as possible to make those buildings a reality, so that it doesn't sit as a parking lot for a long time. That's not, to me, consistent with our general plan. The overall vision is, but my understanding is it's going to be a couple years until it becomes a building and a center of county services, which is, of course, badly needed to consolidate and decrease siloing and all that. But you know, I hope that anything we can do to move that forward and to encourage, you know, creation of that important complex would be beneficial, because as it stands right now, it's pretty hard to say that, you know, yes, we're behind the demolishing of housing and businesses and creation of a parking lot. But I understand that the vision is more than that, so thank you for sharing more about that. And hopefully people who are interested in this issue will be aware of what we've talked about tonight. So I can get on board with it, with the staff, personally with the staff recommendation around alternatives 2 and 3 being the most consistent with our general plan. But I just want to publicly say that I wish that the process didn't have to look like this, and I understand that it does given the constraints. So I'll wait for others to comment.
Do we have any other? Okay, Councilman Burgell.
Yeah, just a brief one. I wanted to thank you for coming tonight and answering questions. I think that sometimes, you know, I know personally, sometimes I get upset with things because I don't know what's really going on, and so I base my information on little or none. And so I think it's really important as officials and as public servants that we educate the public and answer these questions that are really challenging. And when this first came out, I think the real issue is that, you know, you're going to put a parking lot right in the middle of town, but there was nothing mentioned about any of this, you know, the plan that was in place. And so I think, you know, moving forward, I just want to say, as a group, I think that we can all take this as a lesson to do better and with educating people as we move forward. Because I think that, you know, some of this controversy that it began with could have been well averted if we had initially, and I understand there were reasons for that, and I understand we have reasons for that too sometimes, but that for me is a very frustrating thing, that we don't give the public enough information sometimes.
Councilmember Castellano.
Sure. Not exactly sure if this is the time for that, but I would be interested in the council writing a letter of support in regards to that parking lot, and specifically mentioning the desire for, in accordance with our general plan, for less sprawl of parking, you know, and I think that parking lot in particular is a good potential for a parking garage or more also densification of parking, so that we can have less kind of spread of parking throughout Old Town.
Can I just ask for a consensus on that? No? On a consensus on a letter supporting that we want the state to provide more parking? Okay. So, okay. Next, is that it?
Yeah, I think I said everything else earlier.
Okay.
So,
Councilmember Arroyo?
I also wanted to note before moving forward that the Humboldt Transit Authority and the county staff, you know, I sit on the board for the Humboldt Transit Authority, and we'll continue to have conversations around providing transit passes to county employees or ways to do that. I know that Supervisor Mike Wilson, who also sits on that board, is interested in seeing that. And so we had some conversations about, obviously we cannot require that county staff take transit to and from work, but at least making it more available or incentivizing it. And so we'll continue looking for ways to do that. And there's already sort of an ad hoc committee set up to discuss that, as well as other public agency staff being able to utilize transit as an alternative. So I'll just go ahead and move that the City Council adopt a resolution of the City Council of the City of Eureka determining that the County of Humboldt's acquisition and development in the 1000 block of 4th Street conforms with the City of Eureka 2040 general plan, and specifically that alternatives 2 and 3 will be the most consistent with the City of Eureka 2040 general plan.
I'll second.
All right. All in favor?
3 yes votes, Councilmember Mesner and Allison absent. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank you,
County
Kristen.
Administrator Nielsen. Sorry.
That's exactly what
meant
I
to
was
say
going to
that.
say, but she did a great job. We all appreciate your coming. All right. Yeah, you want to do it now, or let's do it after this one, this item, or do you need it right now? Okay. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll come back. It'll be very short. We're going to bump up item C2, which is the State Coastal Conservancy Grant Acceptance, Bay to Zoo Trail Preliminary Design, and Environmental Review. I believe, is Director Slattery present? No, we have our engineer doing this.
Thank you.
Thank
Let me
you.
get my-
Jesse, I'm sorry.
Jesse Willer.
Thank you. Engineer Willard. I do know everybody's first names.
So thank you, Mayor and Council. I'll be giving a brief presentation on the Beta Zoo Trail and the item that's on the agenda tonight regarding accepting the grant funds from the State Coastal Conservancy for planning for environmental document and some preliminary design that is associated with the environmental document. So as a city, we've been planning for active transportation as one part of our whole transportation infrastructure, and it's something that we feel like needs to be addressed in a number of ways to provide a framework to establish a network of non-motorized facilities. So the idea is to promote active methods of transportation, increase safety for non-motorized transportation, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and promote healthy activity. When we step back and look at our city, the majority of the city is built out within the city limits. There's a lot, the street network, the block network is fairly full, except for a few places, some smaller lots, and then as far as long linear areas, what we have are mostly our gulches and greenways. Areas that are available to put any sort of significant or dedicated non-motorized transportation facility, excuse me. Some of the big planning ideas that we've been talking about as far as non-motorized transportation is concerned and active transportation is to look at our city and kind of identify some things that we already know, which is that we have our beautiful waterfront trail that extends from down south at Herrick Avenue and all the way wrapping up to the north and ending at Tidd Street, almost basically covering the entire west and north sides of the city. What we lack is facilities kind of within the core of the city, and then also along the boundaries on the east and on the south side of the city. So what you'll see on the map here, coming down, and I'm without a pointer at this time, so I'll try to just explain it verbally, but coming down on the right-hand side of the map, here, I will use the mouse. Along the right-hand side of the map here, and extending down through here, which kind of follows the limits of follows the city limits, is the kind of the concept of a looped trail network, potentially on the outside of the city. The idea with that loop trail would be to provide kind of the basis on the edges, and then we would work towards providing a web of dedicated non-motorized facilities within the core of the city that would link all the neighborhoods and locations that people need to get to and from locations. As well as trying to plan towards dedicated non-motorized facilities and active transportation facilities, we'll also work at closing gaps in existing facilities that we already have. For example, the Waterfront Trail along Waterfront Drive between G and J Street. Currently, we're in construction down there to open the roadway up there, and additionally, there'll be bike lanes and a widened sidewalk there that'll accommodate bicycles and pedestrians and connect to the boardwalk and other sidewalk facilities on both sides. This last, I believe it was early or in winter of this last year, or this year, we had a strategic visioning session with council, and one of the things that came out of that was to continue to move forward with some of the planned, some of the ideas of the trails. I'm going to step back a little bit because I think I kind of rushed through one concept here, which is, actually no, I didn't, sorry, apologize. One of the primary things that came out of the strategic visioning was to continue to plan for trails and non-motorized facilities. One of those particular facilities was the Beta Zoo Trail. This is an excerpt from the strategic vision session, one page, and then there was another section further on that talked about, again, brought up this as a priority out of some of the strategic juncture analysis here and positive things that the city could be working towards in the next 5 to 10 years. So now a little bit more on the particular project that we're talking about tonight as far as the award of these funds and accepting those funds. The concept of the Beta Zoo Trail is a trail system that would stretch from the existing Waterfront Trail by Tidd Street. It would follow the second slough towards the Sequoia Park and the facilities there. The idea would be to have a facility that would connect the neighborhoods, that would connect Washington School and Zane School and St. Joseph's Hospital, the park, the zoo, and future connection to the McKay track, which is moving ahead, and then other facilities in the area. So the objectives of the planning process would be to establish a Class 1 trail facility between the southern Eureka and the Eureka Waterfront Trail, improve safe routes to Zane and Washington schools, increase non-motorized transportation options, increase active recreation, and connect the Waterfront Trail, Humboldt Bay Trail, Myrtletown, future McKay track cut in other locations in Eureka. Generally speaking, the trail is very similar to what we have in the Waterfront Trail now. A Class 1 facility is, for the most part, what's planned, a 10-foot wide paved trail with 2-foot shoulders meant for use as transportation. In addition to that, there will be bridges, culverts, viewing platforms, benches, and interpretive signs. At least that's the concept of the plan. In addition to the trail and those other items, there will be on-roadway improvements, so bike lanes, widened sidewalks, bicycle boulevards, different things that would help identify routes for non-motorized transportation. Currently, where the project sits as far as funding is concerned is we are hopefully accepting the funds tonight for the State Coastal Conservancy that would go towards an environmental document and some preliminary design that would help influence the environmental document. You have to have some general background information as far as what the trail is, the general alternatives, what route alternatives exist to use to do your analysis for the environmental document. Moving from that point, we do not have any current dedicated funds for right-of-way design or construction. It's anticipated that if the project continues forward and has support from the city, that we would be going after active transportation program funding in the next year or so. Currently, with the funding that's being presented tonight, we would be moving out in the next month or so with putting together the document and doing all the different studies and that go into that, and hopefully wrapping up in the July of next year with the environmental document and the preliminary design that goes along with that. So that wraps up my presentation, and the recommendation is to approve the staff's recommendation in the agenda summary. Thank you.
Do we have any questions? No questions? Seeing none, I will open it up to the audience for any public comment.
Good evening, Council. Good evening. I live at the end of Hay Street. My name is Greg Rice. I built there in 1978. I'm the second house up from the end of Hayes Street. End of May, 1st of June last year, I came home from work to have a little lunch, and as I came down Henderson and wound my way down, I saw a lot of activity going on at the end of the road, which was peculiar to me. So I parked in front of my house, and as curious as I am, I just walked down to the end of the gully, and nobody paid any attention. So I walked on down to where they were working, and they were maybe 8 to 10 city workers. And I asked, I just made the statement, what's going on down here? No comment. And so I asked again, so I said, so what are you all doing down here? And again, no comment. And I thought, okay. So I just walked, made my way back up and made lunch and went on about my business. The next day, same time, I came down the hill, and there's a CAL FIRE transport vehicle right at the top of Hayes before you go up the big hill to get up into the new subdivision up there before you go out to Henderson. And so I'm thinking, oh, this is real interesting. I'm hearing chainsaws, weed eaters. I mean, these folks are going to town. And I'm thinking, surely I'll get some action here. So I walked down and I said, who's in charge here? There was nobody in charge. I said, can anybody give me an idea of what's going on down here? Again, no comments. And I said, well, let me tell you something. I'm not leaving this gully till somebody tells me what you're doing down here. So a person walked up to me and said, all we're doing is clearing off above the sewer line, you know, up and down the gully here. We're just cleaning up the sewer line. And so I said, in the 27 years I've lived here, I've never seen anybody clearing off the sewer line. That was that, and I went on about my business. So I'll make this brief. 3 or 4 days later, I'm in a public area down on South Broadway, and I ran across one of the people in that group from the city of Eureka, a person that I know, and they stopped me and they said, you know, I need to apologize to you. And I said, well, what's the deal? And he says, well, we were told by our boss that under no circumstances are we to talk to anybody that comes down in that gully and wants to know what we're doing.
I am so sorry, but your time is up.
It only gets better, though.
I'm sure it does.
Okay.
So maybe you could send us an email, or, I mean, I would love to hear the end of your story, but I have to limit it to 3 minutes.
Do you all have any questions at all?
We're not allowed to ask questions.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
Okay.
Come on up.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Shelley McDonald, and I live at 2904 New W Street, which is over by St. Joseph Hospital. It's not on the map. Try to find it. And I wanted to know if I could indulge and offer a letter from my neighbor, because I am a good neighbor, that wanted to express his concerns in regards to this project. So is it okay to speak?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You'll be a proxy.
The person I'm speaking on behalf for is Mike Comboy, and letter states, my name is Mike Comboy, and I reside at 2215 Russ Street in Eureka. I am writing to voice my displeasure in not being contacted by the city for my opinion on this project that would directly affect my neighborhood. I already have people using my driveway and property to exit the Greenbelt area. My house has been broken into twice, and I now have an alarm system. I've had to deal with mentally ill people and drug addicts. If this project goes through, I will be dealing with more foot traffic and loss of privacy. While I commend beautifying Eureka, it would behoove the city to be upfront with property owners, which hasn't been applied in my situation. Therefore, I am against the Bay to Zoo Trail. Respectfully, Mike Conboy.
Thank you very much. And that really, truly is a nice neighbor thing to do. You sat through a long meeting to get here.
We're all friends.
Thank you.
Okay. And I live in the same area. Again, my name is Shelley McDonald, and I live at 2904 New W, which is next door to this section of Russ Street. It's not on the city map. Hopefully you can find it. I, too, have strong concerns and am not for the Beta Zoo in our area. We will be greatly impacted. We built our home there, and we went through numerous agencies, city, county, state, federal, all the way up to the Army Corps of Engineers. So I'm very familiar with that area behind St. Joseph Hospital, that one little small pocket. It is really a sensitive area teeming with wildlife and birds. And I know the topography quite well because my property is right there. And I'm really concerned as to the possibility, is that 3 minutes? I got 28 seconds, okay. What's gonna happen, there's no room for a trail, on a paved trail. It's all wetlands and sensitive area. And if that's put through in that really small spot, and it really is a small spot of wooded area, we're gonna lose everything. We're gonna lose our privacy, and all the wildlife is gone. And that's not being melodramatic, because I'm not wild on that. And I say I'm gone. Toodles.
Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for letting me speak. Before I start, I'd like to request a meeting with the City Council and Mayor on this topic. I want to show you this lovely drawing that I made. This is what my property looks like. This area here is what I would lose if this project goes through. So you'll understand as you listen why I might be a little less than excited about it. Everyone wants to make Eureka a better place. That's something we all have in common, but how we go about that should be done ethically, with great care, complete transparency and honesty, as well as consideration of everyone who lives in Eureka. I'm here to discuss the grant proposal from the Coastal Conservancy for the Beta Zoo Trail. The project summary misrepresents the facts, and the lack of transparency on the part of the city workers concerning the details of this project has eroded our trust in the Eureka City government. Early in 2018, we got a phone call from Nicole Sager, who told me that they were going to put a trail right through our property along the sewer pipe easement, completely cutting us off from the lower section, which is approximately 1/3 of our property, and that the city is determined to do this, regardless of the effect it would have on our home, our quality of life, or the economic hit we would take from the destruction of our property. The following statements made in the Coastal Conservancy grant are untrue, such as, 1, all the neighbors were contacted. This is not a true statement. Nearly everyone has expressed support. This is not a true statement. The alignment behind the homes is already used informally. This is not a true statement. 80% of the trail right-of-way is owned by the city. I challenge the veracity of this statement if the city is considering a sewer easement suitable for a trail right-of-way. Does this plan meet either of the following conservancy standards? Number 5 and number 8, which are environmentally sensitive areas, as Shelley discussed already, and the trail will supposedly be designed to provide privacy to local residents, which it is not. I will lose all of my privacy. What are the legal ramifications of lying on a grant application and then accepting the funding? The following are examples of the lack of transparency. The city has tried to pacify the neighbors by telling everyone this trail project will take years to implement. However, they are actually rushing to implement. Last October, in a meeting with Jesse Willer, we were told that the trail was no longer going to be on our property, and yet on their map it goes not one, but two, right through our property. And a bike trail will totally cut us off. This, well, like I say, I want a meeting.
Thank you.
I have a packet for everyone.
You could
So-
pass out, we'll take the packets, and then you'd call us individually or email us individually. We can't meet with you together, so.
Glasses. You know, it's my understanding that the city council is the driving force behind this trail. That's why I'm here tonight, really. First of all, our property is going to be severely impacted by this trail. When we bought our property, it was, you know, the property, what we were looking at was the privacy of the property and you know, the redwood trees, the wetlands, the creek. I've been involved in creek restoration in the past, and so once we got the property, started looking around, I realized that the city of Eureka had put their sewer line directly in the creek at some time in the past. When they decided to put it in a different place, apparently they just left it in the creek because there's parts of the pipe sticking up all over the creek. Welcome to come to my property and check it out. My plan was to go ahead and revitalize the creek, and I will if I'm allowed to keep my creek, right? You know, this is you know, it's the creek really is a habitat for cutthroat trout. It's an endangered species. You know, this whole area is a place where wildlife comes through town. You know, we have bear, you know, we have all kinds of creatures, deer. It's a great place, fox. Really delicate ecosystem. There's springs everywhere through here, right? It's really unconscionable to me that you'd even think about doing this. And furthermore, it would deprive my family of a large section of our property, about a third of it, really. Unless we put an overpass over the trail, perhaps. Plus the privacy in our house. We live on the side of a hill. The trail, we could shake hands with the people going by, I would imagine, from our balcony in the morning. After hearing about the trail, my wife and I began to explore the other trails in town. And we walked the Historic Trail, the Cooper Gulch, the Bay Trail, the Hammond Trail. All the trails are wonderful in many ways. You know, we were really saddened to see the debris, the vandalism, the camps. We researched trails online in other towns. The Portland Springwater Trail is a nightmare. I mean, they're really having a nightmare up there, and numerous other trails in different parts. You know, it's a magnet really for the underserved in our community, and any trail in any town is really just shows what the town is. And you can look at our town and see what it is right now. We're going to have that on our trail in our backyard, actually. With the Boise decision, we can't even, it'll become public property, apparently. You know, we're not going to be able to ask these people to move. We don't have a problem right now. We don't want the problem.
Thank you very much. Yeah, sorry, time is up.
Time is up.
Yep.
Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Buck Knoll. I have about 400 feet of this trail I own. It's an easement, but it's a sewer easement. And the easement, if you read it, it says it's basically for maintaining the sewer. It's not for public use. I put no trespassing signs up there. I've tried chasing people out only to get rude comments back. It's very frustrating for me. I actually have another easement on my property that's for public use. People use it. They throw trash in my yard. About maybe a third of the people that use it are upstanding people. The rest of them are all trash. I'm constantly kicking them out. I've only, been called horrible names and stuff from my balcony that overlooks this great trail, the one that's already in place. I want to know, is anybody let the parents of Zane know that you're actually going to have a trail going right through their property so that people can access this school? I mean, you can basically use the other walking path that there is right now, and you can walk right onto this school. I mean, you can walk right up and mingle in with the kids if you want. I was just curious if anybody's notified the school about that. The easement it's already in place for the walking path. It's constantly kept up by a few of the neighbors. I refuse to keep up on it because I hate it and I don't want it there. But there's, like I said, there's trash, graffiti. There's encampments around there. If I wasn't out there patrolling it, there wouldn't be anybody else. The sheriff helped me out for a little while, and I think anymore they just have better things to do. So I think you guys should really look at what you're doing when it comes to the trails. If you were to actually go out on the waterfront, maybe a third of the people down there that are using that are the people who are keeping it up. The rest of it is just kind of a hobo highway, and I don't want that going through my house. Thank you very much for your time.
My name's Ted Halstead. I live at 1515 McFarland. I've been walking the trail that Buck just talked about for 30 years. It's extremely beautiful, and you folks, what you've done with the waterfront trail and everything, best thing that's happened in the whole time that I've lived in Eureka. So keep up the good work.
Sorry, no problem. Hi, my name's Pam Halstead, and I'm a volunteer trail steward coordinator on the Eureka Trail, Waterfront Trail North. And I just want to say some of the, from my experience of being there for the last 2 years that the trail has been in existence, it's changed remarkably in really positive ways. My husband and I walked our dogs along that trail. Not only are we doing a work day next on Saturday, but we've walked that trail for over 2 years and with our dogs, and we have seen a severe decrease in the number of homeless people that are able actively using it, and a lot less trash. So there's people maintaining it, and I would like to say that I feel like 90% of the people that use the trail appreciate it and are very appreciate it that it's there, and it's a wonderful opportunity for people to share in the community. And I feel like this trail, I also live on McFarland Street, and McFarland Street directly accesses this trail and the sewer easement that was just discussed. And my husband and I also walk that trail regularly, as he just mentioned. That was my husband. 30 years we've walked the trail. And we have a close working relationship with police when we see transients and things like that. But overall, this trail, I understand people have different experiences. But from our experience, the trail is phenomenal, and it's a wonderful way to, this will be a different sort of trail than the other trails that are in Eureka because it's a riparian area. Yes, there's marshes and things like that, and wildlife uses this, but I feel like if you ask the people in Hammond, all these trails are at first, people are very discouraged and think it's going to be horrible and it's going to increase the number of people. It's just going to be a homeless highway. And as far as the experience on the Hammond Trail, it's been the very opposite. And as far as I've seen on the Eureka Waterfront Trail North where I work, it's been the very opposite. And over time, things tend to get better as more people see that this is a wonderful asset to the city, and it's used in ways that are way more proper than it has in the past. Thank you.
Hi, Council. Oh, sorry.
I started following this a couple years ago when Rob pointed out to me how excited he was. They were going to bring this trail up from Herrick Avenue straight to Sequoia Park and literally right next to our property. And I said, hold on, buddy, we need to talk. So in the course of 2 years, the story changed about 12 times. I never could really get an answer where that was going to go, but he promised me it wouldn't be next to our property. Hearing all these people tonight, I'm really concerned about the transparency of how we're going to know what the real plan is. And so my hope tonight would be, before you actually accept this money, talk to your constituents, talk to the people of this town, and really find out what they want and find out what they know. Like, what do you really know? Because I don't think a lot of people know a lot of things about this trail. And I think the waterfront trails are beautiful. I think they're great. I think the loop concept is great, but let's loop it. Let's take it out McKay. Let's take it out and around. Let's not bring it through our neighborhoods, because I think we're asking for trouble. At one of Michelle's ward meetings last year, a gentleman got up and spoke and said he moved away from his home in Portland on the Springwater Trail. He said it was horrible. The crime, the murders, everything. I went home and Googled Portland Springwater Trail and was shocked. He was telling the truth. It's pretty bad. So I would hope that you guys really, really look at this and listen to the people that are going to be affected, and hopefully we're not going to be on the other side of that problem. And as far as the kids walking to school safe and making it a safe route, I have concerns about that. My brother-in-law rides his bike to work. He was on the Hirshaki Trail yesterday. He got chased by a pit bull that came out of one of the homeless people's camp. So I don't know how safe it's going to be for our kids on these trails until we get a grip on our other problems. So, thank you.
Hi, I live on Hayes Street, right next to the woods, and people have made some very cogent points, particularly about the fact that it's wet and that there are lots of wildlife and endangered things, and I can't imagine how a 10-foot wide trail would fit in there anywhere. But my main concern is the statement that this would be a safe place for kids to walk from Washington to Zane. And you have to picture it's down inside a gully, big trees all around. So they're going to be walking, well, within sight of some of our homes, but it's not open like the Bay Trail. It's deep down in a steep gully with trees all around, and it doesn't seem like a safe way for kids to walk to school. So I think that was a very misleading statement.
Hello, I'm Michael Pruill with the Humboldt Trails Council, and myself and the Humboldt Trails Council are in favor of this Bay to Zoo trail because we think it will add safe alternative transportation for people, including school children. Some of the statements indicate there's difficulty with crime, fear of loss of privacy, and my experience in Arcata, which is where I reside, and the experience on a national level with trails that have been converted, is that crime decreases, privacy issues are usually not a problem, and that property values tend to increase, not decrease. So I know individual experiences are contrary to that, but that seems to be the research information on a regional and a national scale. So I'm very much in favor of this trail, and I hope the council can address some, and the city can address some of the concerns people have had about lack of information and lack of prior notice and transparency, because those certainly are real concerns. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Eric Wiest.
For you. I'll bring it up so you don't have to bend.
My name is Eric Wiest. I live on Hayes.
I've lived there for 20 years, and I've kept a track of the nature. There's eel that live in the creek, fish, giant Pacific salamanders, frogs, families of foxes and deer. That's why we live. That's why we moved there. It's quiet. It's kind of private, and we've had a few homeless people come by, and what I can do is tell them it's private property, and they leave. It's a great place to live. If I hear a bump in the night, it's probably a bear or a raccoon. If things built, it's probably some creep crawling around the house. I don't have any cyclone fence up, so I'd probably lose some sleep maybe. Parties, who knows? Anyway, I think the whole thing's a bad idea. Thanks.
Thank you.
My name is Craig Benson, and I'm a resident of the Greenways and Gulches, and our combined family property is within the right-of-way easement for this proposed trail. I would like to express cautious support for the city accepting the State Coastal Conservancy grant for the preliminary feasibility level planning for the Bay Zoo Trail. I think having a document that has some more detail that we can respond to and be part of creating will help involve us in it and maybe reduce a more productive or create a more productive dialogue and reduce sort of fear-based responses and get some more factual information. I want to thank the Coastal Conservancy for their generosity to Eureka and thank city staff in acquiring these funds. I see this project through a lens of opportunities that shouldn't be passed up and also very contentious constraints that cannot be overlooked, as you've heard tonight. As for the opportunities, I can't help but support multimodal transportation and connectivity for walkable and bikeable communities. This supports public health and social justice. I support the use of the greenways and gulches as an economic driver. I have read a number of reports, and I believe it to be factual. The trails have proven themselves to increase business opportunity and increase in real estate values. It takes a couple of years, such as the Hammond Trail. I support access by law enforcement to areas of Eureka that are currently difficult to access, which invites criminal trespass and other unwanted activity. I support trails land use that maintains the ecosystem services of the greenways and gulches and limits unpermitted development, further encroaching into them. I've seen dozens and dozens of examples of that, of fill-in wetlands. I support the city doing all of this on their land. On private property, I support the city developing willing community partners to achieve these goals. Now, as a member of a family with acres on the gulch where the trail alignment will fall, I have grave concerns. I do not support government taking or the city reducing our full use of our land. This is going to take a lot of negotiation and potentially some form of remuneration, such as a partial buyout, a trade-out, property tax reduction, conservation easement, or something. You're going to have to throw us several bones and provide some incentives that don't exist right now. I do not support opening up our property to increased liability. This is going to take the city developing some kind of a plan to share liability, or better yet, take on all the liability. I do not support opening up the property to a higher potential for irresponsible use, criminal and nefarious activity. There's going to have to be fencing and commitment to law enforcement on the trail. I do not support the city applying pressure or leverage on landowners to comply with this planning effort. It's going to take outreach, clear communication, good faith negotiation, and trust building. This will probably take longer than other trail projects because it's different. All that said, I support this preliminary planning process, hacia el camino por caminar, which means make the trail by walking.
Thank you very much.
Hi there. My name's Dennis Houghton, Henderson Center resident, and I've been involved in trails for a number of years now, just in my professional career. And I worked for the city of Arcata, retired out of there after 23 years, and we had similar issues like this. Everybody gets nervous, and it's understandable. So, I mean, going forward with this project, and from what I'm hearing from a lot of the residents, is just increased communication And that transparency, I think, is really important. Bring people in on the front, and just so they understand what's going on, to eliminate misunderstanding. I understand people's concerns about privacy. I understand concerns about the environment and the homeless issue, of course. You know, we've all experienced that here in town. A few things that I've noticed over the years, and in working up in Arcata, and now being a part of the stewards program on the Waterfront Trail. Generally, if you have issues where there's trespass and that sort, you shed a little light on some of these areas that are already being used, and it seems to, I've seen it decrease some. I work with Ted and Pam on the north part of the Waterfront Trail, and the volunteer trail stewards, we've been active in that zone. That I can remember taking a trip on the Matticat and looking what it looked like, 5-10 years ago, when people were just posted up and camped all over there. And we pretty much, in a year, we've gotten rid of all those old camp areas, and things are starting to restore some. I see increased activity on the Waterfront Trail, and I see that as a good thing, and I think that's more eyes and ears out there. Going forward, I know that this trail, the Beta Zoo Trail, is a different site and situation. It's different. But I do think that some of these areas where there's trespass, by opening it up and allowing more people to freely use that area and knowing they can use that, there'll be increased maintenance by city staff. I'm hoping there'll be continued increased patrols. Eureka PD has the Parks and Trails Patrol that's dedicated to these areas, and it's got to be frequent, regular patrol of these areas. You'll notice when things go astray off the beaten track. So, but that's key. And I would even encourage some form of a volunteer group of sorts just to patrol that trail, to work hand in hand with EPD, so that you can get the regular information back. I mean, and I'm talking like it has to happen every day, pretty much somebody out there that's legit and knows what's going on. I just think that the town's small enough where with those eyes and ears out there, we can nullify some of those issues. It ain't going to correct everything, because we all know that this is Eureka, and stuff, and it's a bigger issue than just what we can handle. But I do like this idea a real lot. I think this is. Hope you guys go forward with it. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Sue Johnson Thesel, and I live at the end of Linda Lane, and our property is right where they want to put the trail. I used to live on the corner of Wabash and Summer, and we moved to our piece of property for our privacy. This trail is going to be right off of my deck. It's going to eliminate about 1/4 of my property for where they want to put it. They have a right-of-way for a road at the very edge of my property, but it's on a hillside. They don't want to put it there. They want to put it down in the gulch, right beside a blue line creek. They say it's part of the slough. Maps that I've looked at, it's a blue line creek, which means you've got a 25-foot window that you can't build on it. The sewer line is in that line of flight. Like the gentleman said, they came through, they knocked down all the trees, they cut my trees on my property. I had no idea they were doing it. I was very, very upset. They left a mess. They did not clean it up. They just cut the trees down and said they were making it for the sewer lines. The sewer lines aren't right there. They're over further. So there's that. Also, I have problems with it being in that gulch because we have a resident bear. The bear was on my deck 2 weeks ago. We want kids walking down that trail where there's a bear in residence. There's deer there. There's lots of animals. We've got a camera that we set out, one of those critter cams. There's deer, there's bears, there's fox, everything in there. That bear is not afraid of anybody or anything. I don't think that's a good place to put kids. Also, if they put that down through the trail, down on that easement. Who is liable if someone gets hurt on that trail? You're not purchasing my property, you're on an easement. Am I going to be liable for the insurance on that? Or is the city going to be liable? Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comments? All right, seeing none, I will bring it back to the dais and ask for comments back here. Yeah, Councilman Castellano.
Well, firstly, thank you for everyone who has, sorry, let me fix it. Okay, who has come and commented tonight. And thank you, Jesse, for the report. This is the first time this has come before council since I've been elected. And what I'm really hearing is that there's just a lack of information out there, or at least, at the very least, a lack of clarity of information. And so I'm assuming, but maybe I just have a bit of a question too, that there will be a study and public outreach as part of this grant. Is that true?
Yeah, that's correct. Part of the planning process is it's as you can understand, it's a very long corridor that we're looking at with no one particular alignment that's been selected. So the corridor itself is a very long corridor. There's a lot of different, as been mentioned, right-of-way property owners in the area, as well as school, hospital. So there's the length of the process. There'll be community meetings that will be required as part of that process. This money allows us to move forward with that, with those processes, as well as doing the appropriate environmental studies and cultural and historical and other studies that need to be done, just to analyze it as a project itself, not trying to jump ahead to anything other than this is the first kind of part of like, what do we have, what are the constraints, what are the opportunities that are there that can be understood, and a big part of that would be the community outreach.
Great, thank you. And so I appreciate that bit of insight, and so I want to kind of reiterate to the public that, especially from my perspective of kind of being new to council in this project, I personally am eager for this study because I think it's really the only way that we can really find out enough information to answer these questions that the public has. So I do support moving forward with this, and I definitely understand the public's caution, and questions and concerns, and want to say that they will be part of the process as we move forward.
Any other comments? So I too want to thank everybody that came. I heard your concerns, and I think they need to be addressed. And I think they will be in community meetings. You can contact any of us to discuss this, and we can get you answers as well, usually. The reason that I do support this, I support the beginning. I support the feasibility study. I support, it's hard to make any decision without information, without documentation and information. And I apologize that you folks have not had the information that you feel like you need. In fact, we were just talking about that with the county earlier. I think oftentimes in government, we have a lot going on, and I understand the public getting upset. I've been that person because, the information isn't always out there. The education isn't always out there. And the conversation isn't always out there. So I really look forward to doing better in that regard. That's been on my mind a lot lately with a lot of different things that have been going on about how it's so important for us to be able to have that positive or that respectful communication. And that's why I appreciate you all being here. One of the reasons is that we can't know if we don't hear. And it's our job to do a better reaching out. So thank you for that. And again, I say that I do support this, the feasibility study, the beginning portion of it. We're not to the trail yet.
We're not to any of that right now. We're just looking at a document to see what's going on and what is possible. So that too is why I support this. You can contact me. My number's here, so we can talk. Thank you.
Councilman Arroyo.
Great. Well, I would say, of course, you're welcome to contact us at any time, and the information that we have is similar to what's in this presentation at this time, at least as council members. I know that I have visited the easement in person and walked along portions of it that are accessible, and to kind of see for myself what we're talking about. I don't live near it. I do my house backs up to a green belt, and so I can understand the appeal of living on a green belt and the sort of desire for privacy that comes with that. But beyond the information that we have here tonight, and perhaps some city planning documents that we certainly have access to upon request, we don't really have a lot more information about what some of the, Jesse said, some of the environmental constraints and other kind of feasible options are. So I do know that long before my time on the council, this has been included in the Open Space Parks and Recreation Commission's plans, and it's been decades long that this concept, this broad concept for a trail in this portion of the city has been a consideration, always knowing that that easement was a portion of what the city's right-of-way is. So I certainly don't want to see it move forward if there is vehement opposition, and that means that I think people who feel strongly about this project, please tell us where the correct alignment should be. And if there are portions of the alignment that are where there are constraints and they have to be in one specific place and people just absolutely do not want it, then tell us what other alternative there could be. And that's what these planning studies are about. I know I participate in a lot of transportation planning in my job, and I don't get to work in the city of Eureka on those issues, obviously, because of conflict of interest. So I get to work in other communities around Humboldt, and it's really a process of asking people to identify, what their safety concerns are, what their privacy concerns are, and what the opportunities are, and to go from there. So it's an iterative process that people being engaged in is really helpful. So I can tell that the community is really engaged on this topic, and I believe that we should accept the funds to explore the information that both residents provide and that's available based on environmental studies. So I do want to see us at least have that information to be able to make good decisions. So I would be supportive of proceeding with this, and with that I will move that we adopt a resolution authorizing the acceptance of the State Coastal Conservancy Grant Project number 18-017-01 and accept the award of these funds and appoint the city engineer as agent to execute all documents and agreements for the project.
Second.
All right, I have a first and a second, and as far as discussion goes, I just want to say one thing, and that's procedural. I also very much appreciate that we had people coming from both sides, and I want to say I noticed that every once in a while you guys wanted to clap for each other and you held yourself back, and that created a nicer environment that allowed everybody to speak freely. So I appreciate that you were able to support each other, but without intimidating other people by doing the big clapping thing. It's just, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. We have a motion. We have a second. All in favor?
3 yes votes, Councilmember Messner and Allison absent. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Now, we're going to move forward to item C1. Once again, Director Gerving, we emptied out the room for you.
First, I have to remember what item C1 is. Here we go.
I'm sorry, Waterfront Drive Connection is what it's called. Thank you.
Okay, so here we go. Yes, item C1 here is sort of part of the Waterfront Drive Connection project. We look at this as really part of that larger whole. What we're actually talking about is a couple of different things on H and I streets. First is extending the existing one-way couplet of H and I from 2nd all the way to Waterfront Drive, and then also creating some diagonal parking on H Street. First, I want to start with a
Can we close the door? I'm getting distracted, or maybe mention that we can hear them in here. Thank you.
So just a little bit of timeline of where we are with Waterfront Drive Connection. It was actually prior to 2005 that a PSR was developed, a project study report. It was approved by the City Council then. The environmental document was completed 9 years later, and since then we've really been working to finalize the construction plans, piece together funding, and then in July of this year, construction actually commenced. The groundbreaking happened in late June. Where are we now? The wet utilities have been completed, water and sewer, stormwater. The dry utilities like PG&E, AT&T, and Suddenlink are just about wrapped up, like as of today. Rough grading is in progress, and over the next 30 days, we'll see a lot of sidewalk work being completed with paving to follow, and still aiming for project completion around November 1st. At this point, we're still on schedule, so it's looking good. A couple of shots from today. This morning, went down there and took a few pictures. So looking west along the alignment of the new street from I Street, you see here a fire hydrant that will be in the new sidewalk, and then down from there you see another concrete DI in the ground that'll be at the edge of the sidewalk. So this is the edge of the roadway looking west toward Old Town. Then looking east from Old Town, down the new road, you see a new section of sidewalk that's going in where there was a gap before, adjacent to the county's office building there. And then some of that rough grading taking place in and around the railroad tracks, and then the roadway beyond. Looking down I Street, where we're proposing to extend this one-way connection, see a new retaining wall holding back a hillside that's there, and then the intersection of I and Waterfront, and looking up H Street from Waterfront, the railroad tracks, and some of the last of the storm drain work happening off to the left-hand side. So the extension of that one-way traffic from 2nd down to Waterfront is really a logical extension of the existing one-way couplet. H and I function very well in that regard for most of their length through the city. So extending it will provide continuity and clarity for motorized and non-motorized traffic, and converting that segment of H Street to one-way will also allow for diagonal parking to be put in place. Looking at two pictures of the existing condition on the left and the proposed on the right. So right now this is H Street between 1st and 2nd, and we've got two-way traffic and a long driveway here where the mouse is hovering for Humboldt towing. On the opposite side of the street there are 4 parallel spaces. Just on the other half of that block you've got, again, 4 parallel spaces on the east side of the street and a couple on the left because there's a driveway there. By converting the street to one-way and only having one travel lane, that opens up a lot more width to work with, and so we have far more spaces if we convert to diagonal. We start with 10 parallel spaces, and we end up with 20, 18 diagonal and 2 parallel. It's practical due to the circumstances here because of the low speeds, and again because there's only one traffic lane as opposed to 2. It could be considered on an I Street in the future if demand warrants, but there's not a lot of parking demand over there right now, so at present the proposal before council is just diagonal parking on H Street. So staff's recommendation is three different things. There are three separate resolutions because of the way the municipal code is worded. We need to designate specific streets as one-way, and we're doing that here with the first two resolutions. And then the same thing, establishing diagonal parking on H Street between First and Second. So you can read the whole thing if you'd like, or you can just move staff's recommendation, and I can answer any questions you might have.
Does anybody have questions? Do we have any comments from the audience on this item? Seeing none, I will bring it back for discussion. Councilman Burgell.
Well, I think this is a great idea. I think about, I often think when I'm walking through town about Rob's presentation years ago, is this a parking problem or is this a parking problem? I don't know if you recall that, but it's really stuck with me, so you recall that. So I like the idea of the parking and the one-way. So anyway, I support this. I'm going to make a motion that we move staff's recommendation on all three.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, all in favor? There we go.
3 yes votes, Councilmember Messner and Allison absent. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Easy peasy. Now we are going to move on to item C4, which is the adoption of modification of local coastal program amendment for cannabis. Mr. Dumichel.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is the final municipal installment of this action item here, the modification of local coastal program amendments for cannabis. Just for a brief review, the Coastal Commission approved this, but they're requiring changes to the city for some clarity, and that has to be adopted via ordinance, and that's why we're here today. Like I said, we're providing some clarity, but it's not a substantial change from what you've originally approved. And so tonight we're passing the proposed ordinance, and there's a resolution that has to be provided to the Coastal Commission in order to wrap this thing up. Just a reminder of the timeline, the recent part. So that was back in August, the Coastal Commission approved this. We were here on the 3rd for a public hearing. We're here today to consider adoption. And then if this is signed relatively quickly, I can get it to the Coastal Commission. They can have it done in October. So the staff recommendation is to approve it. I've provided a suggestion motion. I'm here for any questions you may have. And that's my full report.
Do we have any questions? All right, do we have anybody in the audience who has any comments about this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back for comments or a motion.
I'll make a motion.
All right.
I move to waive reading, read by title only, and adopt Bill number 970-C.S, approving the local coastal program amendment modifying Eureka Municipal Code Title 10, Chapter 5, and adopt a resolution of the City Council requesting certification of the modified cannabis retail and signage amendment.
I'll second.
All in favor?
3 yes vote, Councilmember Messner and Allison absent. Motion carries.
Very nice.
You don't have to come back on that one. Are you excited?
All right. So now we are going to move on to reports. And this will be our response to the 2018-19 grand jury report titled Like Home. Who's going to be doing the presentation on this?
Mayor, I can introduce it substantively. Probably several staff will be available to answer questions, including Kristen Getz and Melinda Peterson.
Thank you very much.
So the grand jury issued 2 rather lengthy and substantive reports pertaining to programs and policies of the city of Eureka, our relationship to the county, the philosophy of law enforcement, and certain of what they deem to be deficiencies in the city's housing stock and possibly the city's efforts to
to modify that housing stock. Director Homeland, I think one of his last acts as a city employee was to finalize his version of the response. Subsequent to that, it was subject to some editing by me, but not a lot, and then some supplementation by Housing Program Manager Peterson, and that's what you have before you. In the end, it's the council's response, although obviously the only way to get this before you was the assistance of your staff, but this is your document, and so if you have changes, if you have questions, I urge you to put them on the table now. I think the final date for us to respond to this is the 27th of September. The problem is I don't believe we're going to have a meeting between now and then, and so if you do have changes, and this, by the way, all this goes for the other report as well. If you have changes, I think you could approve this response subject to the changes that you generally want to make, and then rely on staff to come up with the language as an approach if you want to make any modifications. Certainly, we hope it's adoptable as is, as your response, but like I said, it's your document, so any changes that you want.
All right, so let's start with any questions. I'm sure everybody has read it thoroughly and has opinions. But no questions? Oh, do we have a question, Councilman Castellano?
I think I mostly have comments.
Okay, same with comments. All right, in that case, we'll open it up to public comment before we do our comments here. Is there anybody here to speak to this?
Sit here for too long for me to sit down here and wait. But important for me to show your gratitude to all your city to help out the people I serve in. And during the Power March, and city take a huge action out and helping the people move in the places. And today is very successful. Not just to move out the people out of Power March, also create a job and opportunity for the people. Renew the life, pathway to payday. As we've been 4 years, very successful. We had 92% successful in there, and right now they start another program called Uplift. It to me is very absolutely wonderful, and help the people rebuild the self-esteem and help them confidence. And right now they can see what happened to them. Live on the street and pick up, right now pick up all garbage the people leave behind, and then it's absolutely amazing. And I never forget the city provide when we moved the people out of Pogo Marsh, provide a service for the dog training. I'm a first one 10 dogs. I bet 10 dogs in my arm, still a lot of scar, and it's a souvenir. So anyway, but dog training, and right now I have so many house property owner provide a housing for me. The village, you provide the funding for that. Last Saturday, we had 5 people move out of the village, 4 in a permanent housing, and 1 we helped them get a job in Colorado. And right now, tonight, we had another family move out in a permanent housing. I think you guys is really helping me a lot. The police officers are really good to me. And right now, I had a couple of space in a village. Just when a cop or a sheriff department or a probation office come to me say, we have somebody to go, and can you have a spot for them? We do. And then we open up even for the people in the SSI or disability. They can stay with us for 1 month. In a 1 month, they save the money, and then we can help them find housing. And I've been so many people, visitors come from out of Humboldt County, out of California, come to visit me. Want to copy our policy, anything, I invite them to stay with us. And Monday, yesterday, I had a group from Redwood City come over here, and amazing how much city can help me out and work together. We are partner here. We work together, unity, that matter work. And thank you very much. I gotta go.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments on?
Hello. My name's Brian Roos.
I don't like to intimidate people, but I don't like you to have to bend either.
I have read the responses, and I do not have a statement prepared. One thing that did strike me, something that I read just moments before the meeting in response to public restrooms. There are restrooms along the waterfront is in the response, and 4 of them are open 8 whole hours a day from 8 a.m. until 4 p.m. And and they are located along these, along the waterfront specifically, it does mention, and then also in Sequoia Park. So unless people are in these areas, they don't have access to restroom facilities. And also I have witnessed the vandalism that does take place at the public restrooms by the gazebo. It's completely unacceptable. It's very unfortunate. It's troubling. It's very troubling. But I don't see how closing that restroom at night is obviously would prevent anyone from getting inside and vandalizing it during those hours. But that is one, I do think that there needs to be more publicly available restrooms. We all know that businesses don't want anyone using their restroom, and that applies to citizens. I'm houseless myself. I've seen people that are apparently housed, no, you're not buying anything, you're not using our restroom, and it's a problem. It affects everybody. And so just on that one little point, I did want to bring that up. Thank you.
Do we have any other public comment on this one? All right. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the dais for comments here. Councilman Castellano. Well, I assume you all do.
Let's see. Well, thank you to everyone who commented again and for the report. Let's see. I want to begin with just saying it, and I mentioned this in a smaller meeting earlier, but I wanted to mention it where other council can hear as well, is that in the future, I would love for reports such as this to have a study session included so that there's more time to offer commentary as the report's being developed. It's just something I think would give the potential for a deeper response on the topics. So with that being said, and I do appreciate staff's attentiveness to efficiency as well, but I love to respond. So with that being said, let's see. For this report, let's see, for F8, where we're responding to that existing day centers are insufficient to meet the needs of the Humboldt County homeless population. I would like to add the words "as well" in the paragraph where we say, however, the City of Eureka strongly encourages the county to site such centers in other Humboldt County communities as well as in Eureka. And to avoid the thinking that all solutions to homelessness must be located in Eureka. I feel like it's important that we also acknowledge that we need sites both in Eureka and in other places, because we do have people who need access to day use centers in Eureka. Let's see, and then for our 7, yes. This was the one about, just to summarize, about safe parking programs. And let's see, my greatest concern, specifically, well, first I want to say that I do feel like Eureka is making some great movement on housing. I mean, just since I've been on council, there's a lot of projects that are coming forward. There's been changes in code that will help things progress, I think, much more quickly than they were in the past. But I do think we still need to be mindful of ways that meet transitional needs, and particularly that are low to zero barrier solutions. You know, I talked today to a number of different service providers in the community who are really pleased with the work that Eureka is doing, but you know, I still think that we have to do something that addresses these low to zero barrier transitional needs until we have, you know, housing for everyone that has the support systems necessary and in place. So that being said, I feel like for R7, it would be great to, whether or not it's a parking area, to, at the very least, investigate more short-term transitional solutions that we could bring to the table. Let's see, and then, and perhaps in this section, I think it would be useful to mention the need of partnership with the county for case management, mental health support for people who are placed in housing, so that housing can be successful. I think that's all I have for this one.
All right. Councilman Arroyo.
Great. So overall, I appreciated the staff's thoroughness of the response. I agree that I think R7 saying this recommendation will not be implemented. I would like to see, and this is talking about the supervised safe parking programs, I would remain interested and open to partners in the community, and I've brought up in the past, perhaps faith-based institutions. I knew in other cities, churches host a rotating, you know, supervised safe parking program where the impact is basically reduced through rotating to different sites, so that it's not consistently in one neighborhood. That sort of helped reduce the concerns around that to some degree, and have utilization of church facilities for restrooms and showers, which is a big request, but often in the wheelhouse of some faith-based organizations. So perhaps that's something that could be realized in our community if we had willing partners. So I'm not opposed to seeing that. I think that the city of Eureka would supervise that is not feasible at this time. But I don't want to rule out working with partners on a safe parking program. I didn't, perhaps I missed it, but in this response I didn't see anything about the transitional like trailer site project, which is in development. Perhaps I just missed it, but that is somewhere where we are continuing to focus energy, but there's some obstacles, so that's continuing to move forward, is my understanding. Could staff elaborate on that?
We are trying to keep that project moving forward, but as you indicated, we have run into obstacles, so I think that's why we didn't include it, but yet we are still trying to pursue that project.
Okay, but just so the public knows, we are continuing to work on that. There's some, maybe we can have more information and an update about that once we have more information to share. And then, you know, I do agree that we all need to find ways to collaborate, and a joint meeting might be in order to talk about this issue again. It's been years since we had a joint meeting with the Board of Supervisors about housing, when we, and I thought that was really fruitful, actually, to be able to be in the same room and discussing it. And I think because of Brown Act limitations in some ways, we haven't been able to, you know, our conversations are happening in silos, and because of some of the privacy concerns around client confidentiality within DHHS and situations like that, a lot of times information can't be shared as readily as we might like, and we need to be having these conversations publicly. So for recommendations around collaborating more between city and county leaders, I would love to see that happen. So I even though the homeless leadership work group continues to meet, I'd love to see a joint city-county meeting again. And so perhaps if others agree, we could include that as a goal. But otherwise, I didn't have any other. My understanding is around the Day Use Center topic for F8. So I don't know what qualifies as a day use center. Pardon my ignorance, but I know that St. Vincent de Paul is a dining facility. I don't know what the hours are currently or what the day use potential there is, but my understanding was before this was that we had 3 day use centers in Eureka currently. So I guess I have an outstanding question about whether we have 2 or 3 for staff. And I see that the individual from St. Vincent de Paul is here, so I don't know if you want if that would be okay with you, Madam Mayor, to
Sure.
invite you up to
We will get the
speak to
information
that.
from the people who have it.
It's not enumerated in this report, by the way. I'm just wondering for my own edification how you
Right.
consider your facility.
And Leslie was kind enough to forward me the report earlier this evening. We typically have hours of 8 to 4:30 roughly, where there's operations going on. The lunch service is from 11 to 12:30. Open Door Medical comes usually right now about 3 days a week with their mobile medical unit. So they fluctuate between morning and afternoon hours of those 3 days. And then, of course, the St. Joseph Hospital's Community Resource Center is there. Brian's usually there at least 4 days a week, and roughly, I'd say 9 to 4 type hours. And then Betty has her showers going Monday, Wednesday, Friday from roughly 8 to 12. And our staff may be there beyond 4:30 certain days, and the clientele that are kind of regular, they might be hanging out and want to use the restroom or just come in if it's like all of a sudden a storm comes up, and we'll accommodate them. But those are kind of like the regular clientele that we have a knowledge of and a history of and all that and a rapport with. And then, of course, I know Brian has 3 meal services at the Mission. And I'm not sure when I think they get the people out after the dinner service that aren't going to be residing overnight. Yeah. And Betty, I'm still learning about her operations.
Okay. So at least all of those have been billed at one time or another as a day use center. Whether there are restrictions, I know that there are different restrictions and different available hours and services available, but thank you. That helps to clarify the services that you currently offer. And I do know that when we approached a day use center on Wabash in collaboration with a church, frankly, the response to that was so incredible, bleak. Is that what you said? Brutal. I agree with you. That word would be brutal. I was fearful of people's safety after some of the responses I heard. So that, and I know that the church was not willing to proceed with that. And there have been other proposals to locate services in locations where the response has been so not just opposed but terrifying to me, and I've been worried about the safety of the people using the space as well as our own safety. So I think it's something to be conscious of that isn't really reflected in this report, and it's hard to capture the anger that proposing additional temporary services for individuals and transitional services can sometimes evoke, and it's something that, frankly, I'm not sure how to, how to approach besides steady conversation and taking things one or two projects at a time, which is what we're doing now. And so I think one thing that was really hard about reading this report, and if you would like to sit down, you can, but I'm not telling you because I'm kind of going into my other comments. But one thing that was really disheartening about reading this report was that, I think there are a lot of projects in the works that are making visible and obvious progress and hopefully will be positively impactful. And the scale of the issues we have around poverty and around lack of access to housing is so big that it can make people really just, including myself, feel like giving up. So it was frustrating to see that that wasn't acknowledged to the degree that I thought was, that work that is in progress and the steps that are being made, I don't think was acknowledged to the degree that is reasonable for a city of our size and for the enormous amount of political will that it has taken to get the projects that we do have in the hopper going. So that's just, those are my feelings about this. It has been an enormous emotional and psychological hurdle to get to where we are right now. And so that's something that can't be reflected in this report. But I wish there was a way to factor in the fears of safety and the lost sleep and the, just the how draining it is to move even the projects that we do have forward. So I just wanted to share my feelings on that with all of you.
So
that said, those are my comments about the report. I would like to, I don't necessarily need to clarify anything about day use centers, but I would like to include a goal of having a joint meeting with the county and the city and considering language around R7 that says that the recommendation isn't going to be implemented at this time by the city of Eureka, but that other partners we would remain open to other partners who would be interested in operating such a facility.
Do I just ask for consensus on these changes? I mean,
So I'll give you consensus right now.
yeah, I'm fine with that. We didn't with Leslie's either, but did anybody have any problem with anything Leslie added? Okay. I just wanted to make sure we're all.
Do we feel like there's clarity around what those are for staff to make those changes?
Did you write them down?
I'm taking notes, but I'll probably also go back to the video.
That sounds fun for you.
I figured it'd probably be smarter to just do it as we're making the comments. I wanted to say, just based on what you were saying, I'm relatively new to this, so I didn't have to go through some of the trauma. I watched it from afar, and since I have been in office, I look for paths and ways to, opportunities to move forward. And what I've come to determine is it often looks like there's this clear-cut path to solving a problem. And I found that there are these monstrously huge boulders on those paths that you don't know, that you can't move. And that could be NIMBYism, and it could be lack of resources, and it could be the clients that you can help in one situation and you can't help in another. And so I think what we end up doing a lot is we're looking for cracks in between the boulders to get through. So we help a few people that way, we chip away a few things, and that does mean maybe a dozen people every couple of weeks at the pathway, or a couple months for pathways to payday. Sorry, I have so much trouble saying that. Maybe it does mean, so it's a few things there. It's the Uplift program where we're helping some folks, and then every once in a while, you chisel away a big chunk and you get the Veterans Housing Project. But there are always just these huge obstacles that keep us from being able to really barrel down a path that looks and sounds like it should be really easy, but it's just always full of stuff. And I kind of got that from what you were saying as well. Nothing is as easy as we think it's going to be. You think that there's a path, and it's just not there as easily. But we do pick small projects and consistently move forward all the time with something. Everybody's always working on doing what they can to move people ahead. Councilmember Begal, I'm sure you have lots to say too.
Actually, I don't.
Really?
No, I have a little bit to say.
Nice.
So, I'll just be frank, I was very disappointed when I read the report.
Do you mean the grand jury report?
The
or our
grand jury report,
Okay.
on many levels. I was actually interviewed for the report. I'm not supposed to say that. Oh, we're going to redact that from our video. I'm sorry, I didn't know that. Well, anyway. Can we redact that? I'm just kidding. It's top secret. Anyway, whatever.
I think it's already out there, but I think it's harmless, so.
Okay. So, now I just put my notes somewhere else. Shoot. I got all, you threw me off with that little comment there, Natalie.
Please accept my heartfelt apologies.
Yes, but now I can't find my notes. That's crazy. Oh, that's a real bummer. I don't know what I just did with them. Well, I'm just going to go off the cuff then. Actually, I did find a couple that I have here. So I just wanted to bring up a few things. One of the things I want to bring up is that, you know, a lot changed, and some people in the audience would say it's a negative, and some people would say it's a positive, but I would say a lot changed when the vacation of the marsh happened, and a lot changed governmentally, I believe, at that time. At that time, there wasn't, you know, there was a whole area in our city that was being environmentally, there was a lot of environmental problems. There were people being, living in not so good conditions. They had a community, and it was a beautiful community, and there was a lot of love there, but there was also a lot of violence. There was a lot of sickness. There was a lot going on there that wasn't healthy as well. And what I would like to say is that when the city decided to vacate the marsh and picked a date, the collaboration that came together with all the different entities in our city is the kind of collaboration we need to continue to move forward with this situation. You know, it's a problem, but I want to make sure that we're clear that it's not, people aren't the problem. People are trying to live. We're just trying to figure out ways to help them, to support them into ways of living that, that may be more beneficial if they want. When the marsh was vacated, there was an extensive, exhaustive search actually for city property. Where can we put people? Where can we do these things? I remember AHA was looking to find a place. We looked at private property down under the bridge, which now is going to be a trailer park. That was private property, and so it was expensive. In the city of Eureka, we're pretty built out. There's not a lot of places for us to put people, and frankly, I'll just say it. I think that tent camps, I believe camps are a slippery slope. They just really kind of, they freak me out a little bit. I've, you know, watched history a little bit, and I don't know, putting particular groups of people in one specific space, corralling them, to me is not the solution either. So during this time when we were doing this exhaustive search, we did go to several churches and talk to them about hosting car camps. Absolutely not. They were not willing at that time. And maybe now is time to ask a better question. Maybe now people would be more willing. Things have changed. I don't know. But the reason that I felt also disappointed was that, you know, currently since that time, we've made a lot of mistakes, but we've moved forward in a lot of different directions. And I think that, you know, looking at housing, looking at the ADUs, looking at ways to support people into housing and get them the supportive services that they need, those kinds of things. I think that, you know, the whole idea with the lodge, with providing a particular portion of each new facility that goes up to house people that aren't housed right now, I think that that's been a great implementation. Working with partners like the vets and and Betty and different people to find other opportunities to get them housed. The city doesn't have the funding, the staffing, or any of that. I think a lot of the people that work on getting people housed in the city portion, it's a lot of volunteer work, and it's a lot of we care. Now, that's changed since we've got Uplift. Uplift certainly has been a great gift. It's given people an opportunity to step up to, I heard it said self-esteem comes from doing esteemable acts. And it provides an opportunity for people to grow together and to build relationships and build the community. And again, I don't want to negate that the community was there in the past. I just want to say that that we are moving forward to create new community with similar people. And I wanted to also speak to the day center situation. Currently you can go to Betty's till 2. You can go to St. Vinny, we heard that. You can go hang out at Brian's, but you really can't go hang out there. You can't go hang out there with your dog. You can't go out there, hang out there with your property. Maybe you can for a little while at the Mission, but not if you've got a lot of stuff. So these are things that we need to address. And unfortunately, it's so upsetting, but unfortunately, when we try to do that, when we try to move forward, there is so much cruelty and community opposition that it's very challenging. We don't have a lot of places for people to be, and so when something comes available and the whole community turns into, I don't know, Lord of the Flies, I mean, it's just like these, just mean. It was horrible, that particular meeting. And there have been more like that continue to happen. Respectful communication is going to be the key to moving us forward in any direction, and that's going to be a practice. It's not going to be an easy thing, but we've seen it. We've seen it with the collaboration that we used at the Vacation of the Marsh. We've seen people from the Marsh heal. We know that people can heal and get better and move forward. It's a matter of, and the mayor said it herself, it's a matter of, you got this rock, and it's not the first blow that breaks it. It's not. You just have to keep hitting the rock, chipping away. You don't know if it's the 100th blow that's going to break it or if it's going to be the 50th. And that's why it's so important for us to stay open-minded about different things that may be available. The whole car camping thing, I don't think that's the greatest idea. However, if a community partner was willing to provide the property, provide the oversight and all of that, it could be a consideration. There are so many things that we could be doing with our partners, and I feel like that as we move forward, it's like 2 steps forward, 4 steps back, and a lot of that is fear, because of course people fear what they don't understand, and we're talking about human beings here, human beings. So I was really disappointed by this report. I felt like it really didn't take into consideration all of the efforts that the city is making. There's a lot more efforts to be had and to be done, and we work on them all the time. And maybe they're not out in the public, and again, that comes back to what I was talking about earlier, is that, people get upset because they don't have all the information, and sometimes we can't give all the information, and it's frustrating. So I support this letter as written with the changes. I think that it'll be really important to have a Board of Supervisors meeting. I think that was very fruitful because there was a lot of information at that meeting that there were supervisors that weren't even aware of things that were happening in the city, and probably vice versa. And so to be able to have that community meeting and to look at, okay, well, this is what we've done, now how can we collaborate and make this into something bigger and better? So I support that strongly. And I think that I've said it many times, but I think that collaboration is going to be key, and that respectful conversation is much easier to swallow than being yelled or screamed at. So I don't think anybody likes that. So I'm looking forward to what the city has in store for this situation moving forward. That wasn't a lot.
Councilmember Castellano.
I have another just short comment, and it's not, it's a little broader, but it's something that I think has kind of come come up a little bit throughout the meeting in various public comments, particularly earlier. But I just want to say that, like, the homeless, is not like one group, and there's a lot of difference and diversity amongst a large population of people who, certainly they don't have homes, but there's a lot of difference, and I think it can become commonplace to refer to something you don't like or something we don't like as being caused by the homeless, and I just want to remind people that the path, often the things that have created the life situations that cause someone to be without a house are difficult and complex, and that there are many hurdles that people face as they're struggling to find place, and just that I do want to invite the public to be mindful of making assumptions about a very broad and dynamic group of people when we do talk about people who are without houses.
All right. I believe that is our report now. Somebody want to make a motion to accept this with corrections?
So moved.
All in favor?
Second.
3 yes votes, Councilmember Messner and Allison absent. Motion carries.
All right. So we will move on to the next city council response to the report titled Les Miserables. And we don't need the introduction again because it's the same as last time.
I think there's nothing different
Okay.
except to identify Chief Watson and Miles. Both of them have contributed in a big way to the report, starting with the very first draft by Chief Watson, which was very timely and very extensive. And most of that, almost all of it, made it into the final draft response. But the community services did chime in with some very important information about some of the programs that we're engaged in. So they're here if you have questions for them.
Excellent. So do we have questions on this report? Councilman Miguel?
Well, I don't know if this is the appropriate time, but I would love for Director Slattery or Director Mclaury to come forward and talk a little bit about the programs, because I think that the public doesn't know some of the programs that we have going on. And I don't know if this is appropriate now or if it's something that we can get in the city manager's report later, but certainly things like Uplift and things like the CAPE program, things that are working in our city, I don't think that the public really is familiar. So I know we are to a degree, but
Yeah, that's giving me some thinking.
I think we could probably provide a more comprehensive report at a following council meeting with appropriate overheads and so on.
I'm almost wondering if we could do more of a town hall type of style with the reports of the things that have been happening, where people can have some conversation. We could just plan another special session of a meeting. Look at, here comes Director Slattery. He's like, I'm gonna just tell you now.
thank you, Director.
Meeting this week, but next council meeting was our intention to come back with an update about Uplift and the CAPE program and the different programs that we're providing. If council would like to do that in a special study session, we can do that too, but the plan was to do either as a part of the city manager's report or part of the mayor's report to talk about Uplift.
Can I request that you do a report and bring in somebody that's part of the program so we can hear from people who are receiving the services as well? If you have a representative or...
We have a full production that'll be coming to you. It won't include Imagine All the People like our budget one, but we have interviews with participants, we have interviews with people that have been through the program, we have interviews with all the partners that we're working with, so it'll be extensive.
Great. I think I could speak for all of us when I say we're very much looking forward to that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? All right. Do we have any comments from the audience on this report?
I stepped out for a moment on the last one, so because I referred to the other one, I might refer to the other one in this. Basically, I wrote this more because it needed to be written and it needed to be said. I didn't expect you to change anything, but I think it's really important that while we acknowledge that people are moving forward and there's all these, we have to remember that there's still a lot out there to do. And as we just nibble away, and that was what I was disappointed in the grand jury's report, because they just accepted that, okay, there's this problem, this problem, this problem, this problem, this problem, and so if we solve this problem, this problem, this problem, that will solve it. But it doesn't, because everybody has one problem, and that is that they don't have a place to live. And that, I think, is the foundational issue that needs to be dealt with. And I applaud the city, the housing element, except for the homeless thing that isn't there. The moving forward with housing and the as you said, inclusion within projects, not building big projects for poor people. All that is really wonderful, but right now, stemming from an action report 5 years ago, you still have the police managing your homeless. And that is the reality of it. And I'm not sure that that is really housing first. I'm not sure that that's even really what you want. So I think there's a place for a camp. I resent. I have a real problem with people talking about corralling people. And other things that are said around homeless, I just try to ignore. But I do sometimes have to say it, don't talk to me about corralling people into a place, because that's not what I'm talking about. Again, housing first is not just about housing, it is about the people. It is literally about the people, about listening to what they need and they want and helping them do that. But what it does, the housing part comes into, is that they need a stable place from which to do that. So I will leave it at that. Thank you.
It's like a door opening. Okay, I'm Nezzy Wade, and I wanted to say one thing real quick. Other centers that we have, in all fairness to them, one is the Hope Center, which is part of the mental health complex that we have for the county. And that is a day center. People can go there. They have mental health action plans for healing, and they have a lot of other things that they can do there. There's also our adult day health services, and there's the Senior Resource Center. There are places that people can go. We have a great community, and we have a lot of things that are going on in places that people can go. With respect to our folks who are living on the street, a lot of them aren't comfortable in going many places for a lot of reasons. I can sort of echo the last speaker in terms of how we talk about a really diverse and wonderful and rich population. And I know this is more about the last report than this report, but with respect to safe parking, since it's been part of the topic here, the last report mentioned that it was of limited value, and I'd like to challenge that it's not of limited value. In places where they have it, it's working well, and dispersed sites work very well under the umbrella of a nonprofit or a willing partner. And that wouldn't be, no one would be asking the city to do that necessarily, but I would like you to consider that that can be very helpful. With respect to R1 and R3 and your commentary about implementing no committee of the various players, and that advocates and homeless folks would not be appropriate for reviewing ordinances. But you might be willing to have quarterly meetings and that sort of thing. I'd like you to encourage you to consider working with AHA and other organizations who already hold community conversations and have meetings with people that are informing about their experiences of being houseless and living on the street and in various places. It could be very helpful because I think it's really important that from the point of view of someone who's being affected by whatever circumstances we create, it's awfully important to have their input on how they're impacted by it. So in terms of participating, do participate. I think that's a great thing, and I loved what you said in the letter about collaborations because it has to happen. And you want to take the responsibility off of the shoulders of EPD, well then you need more collaborations for people that are doing things that are working with that population. So I would encourage you to do that and to build greater bridges by participating with us and other nonprofits that are interested in working with and creating alternatives that are affordable for the folks that we know and love and care for. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments? All right, seeing none, I will bring it back to the dais for comments. Councilmember Arroyo.
Great. I just had comments about, this is a very rich report full of data, so thank you to our staff who compiled all of this. It is not data that I had entirely at the ready, so I will save it and refer to it in the near future pretty often. And I found it really beneficial, and it does highlight a lot of those programs. I'm not sure how many people will read the entirety of our report, but it does certainly talk about our Uplift and CSET programs and other community programs that have a lot of value and are aimed at supporting people in a collaborative way rather than criminalizing behavior. So I just wanted to note that these are really more comments than changes. On F3, I hear this comment a lot that the financial cost of criminalizing homelessness far exceeds the cost of providing services to transition people into housing. And people refer to the state of Utah a lot, and I would just remind folks that we're not the state of Utah. We're not a state. We are a small community of 27,000 people, and we are strapped for budget to do basic things. And so to think that there is a pool of resources out there that we are just wantonly spending criminalizing homelessness, I think is a misconception and is frustrating because we don't have access to the largest amount of pot of resources relating to services and resources for services. So that's a continued challenge. I realize that so many of the recommendations are about working collaboratively with the county, who is the recipient for a lot of those resources. But given that we've created a lot of programs to work outside of what is, currently the responsibility and kind of the current bounds of the city, and been really stretching that with so many of our departments working beyond what they were initially tasked to do to try to creatively come up with solutions. It's frustrating to kind of have this the same approach of, if only you would just pour all that money into providing, housing and a stable living situation. Well, we're doing the best we can. I will tell you, there is not just this secret backlog of money that we're holding back on.
And it's not just money.
And it's not just money.
It's all those boulders. It's it's the NIMBYism, and it's the fact that different people can go to different things, and it's complicated.
So complicated. So anyway, I just wanted to note that I think that that's not necessarily. Sure, in theory, I agree with that statement, and it doesn't really translate to what we're really working with in Eureka when it comes to the available resources. And I do believe fundamentally that it's our responsibility to provide services to all our residents, and that EPD is responsible to respond to calls for service when people feel unsafe. And that might be very different from what makes me feel unsafe, and we need to have, our ordinances and the rule of law upheld. And so that finding that balance is critically important, and I just want to acknowledge that I think EPD does a phenomenal job of really doing their best to work with individuals and to respond to people's calls for service, which is really critically important. My only other comment on this, I mean, other than it's an incredible amount of data, just around the recommendation of public restrooms and porta potties, I certainly think it would be beneficial to have more public restrooms. I know that they are very expensive and challenging to maintain. I know that people really held up this example of the Arcata public restroom that they have off the plaza that's very lovely and usually very clean and nice to use. And I was talking to City of Arcata staff about how much they hate that thing. Well, maybe they wouldn't say they hate it. It's just very difficult to maintain and expensive and a constant source of frustration. So recognizing that that has not been a silver bullet for them either. The Portland Loo style toilet and that our staff put so much time and energy into renovating the public restroom in Old Town to use crime prevention through environmental design principles and ultimately that it ended up being still too difficult to keep open 24/7, and had to be modified. But we also did. I just want to recognize that we did for a short period of time collaborate with the Harbor District to get some porta potties in the marsh areas that were immediately set on fire and destroyed. So not to say that we couldn't revisit that concept. Okay, well, my understanding was that, okay, there was one that was set on fire and destroyed, so within like the first couple days. So I don't think that that was what I was told by staff, and I just asked that, this is a back and forth right now. My understanding is that that was not successful. We could certainly revisit that if we had willing partners that were interested in helping monitor that, so it's not just an unmonitored situation where then we are held responsible for the costs associated with that. So again, that's something that I'd be happy to revisit, and if there are folks who would like to help us develop some more public restrooms over time, perhaps the chamber or visitors service, locations that, I know that there are ways that can be managed well, but some of the efforts we've tried in the past have not been successful. So it doesn't seem like those are all reflected here.
Thank you. Councilmember Castellano?
Let's see. Again, this is a very thorough report, and I spent most of today talking to different people in the community, and not that was like an exhaustive search, but about their experiences working with the City of Eureka, and I do want to say that by far people feel like there has been tremendous growth and improvement and positive changes. That being said, of course, there's always work to do and always learning to do. Let's see, I would like to, in terms of the public bathrooms, the successful programs I've seen include 24-hour management, which for sure is something that the city itself cannot afford, but I would like some mention that we would welcome partnerships for management and funding of that kind of management. For example, I saw a great project that's happening in San Francisco where there's people who are working with probation, I think, basically people who have experienced incarceration and then are getting jobs managing restrooms, and it's actually providing some great services for people. And not to say we need to replicate that project, but that there are, maybe some possibilities for community partnership there for funding something like that. Let's see, I feel like it's somewhat indicated in this report, but particularly related to R4, where we're looking at Eureka Municipal Code ordinances. I think it would be great for the city attorney, or I would appreciate the city attorney to spend some time looking, and I think this is kind of on the radar already, but spend some time looking at ordinances that are not in alignment with current practices. And, if we have laws that need to be changed, we should change them or repeal them or do what's necessary to be in alignment with current practices. And I know that is a slow and careful process, but I think that some mention of that could be included in this report. I also think that something that came up a lot in conversation today and that I think about a lot is just the mention of the ongoing struggles with meth and opiate addiction, and that the need for larger county, state, potentially federal funding around these issues to really address the broad scale and scope of challenges associated with that addiction and how it plays out in communities. So I would love to see, I'm not sure exactly where in here, but I feel like it would apply somewhere to this response as well.
Does anybody have any comments about that?
Mayor, could I ask for a little clarification on Councilwoman Castellano's last point?
Please do.
How would you like that to be spoken to in the response?
Let's see. I think, let me get to R4. So many pages. Okay. All right. Let's see. I made the note on page, but I don't know if it's the right place, but on page 1, for our document, page 114, where there's talk about the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. And again, I'm not sure if that's the right place. There's a rather detailed response there, but basically just something about the city attorney will analyze and report to council about ordinances about related to current practices around municipal ordinances.
Well, there is mention already of the fact that because of litigation that we're involved in, Leatherman and Cobine, we're taking a hard look at least 2 of those ordinances. And I'll just guarantee you that they're going to change.
Sure. Yeah.
And then there are others that are, in a way, kind of no-brainers and don't seem to deserve a look for that reason. Unless you have just a kind of a radical policy change, but things like open containers, open use of narcotics in public nudity, things like that, seem like they're not very often written up that way, but it does seem like we probably want to have a law on the books that can address certain behaviors.
Sure.
But actually, that was not the one I was asking about, because you were talking about the problems created by the certain drug addictions, meth and other, and I wasn't sure I didn't know if you wanted the report to be changed to somehow acknowledge that in a more a clearer way, or if that was just kind of a comment that this is one of the challenges that we face, which I think we understand.
Yeah, that was one of those where, like, after reading the report, I just felt like there should be mention of that somewhere, but I wasn't sure where in the report. But it feels like it's a compounding factor.
No, definitely. Okay, so we'll try to find a place in there to mention that as a policy consideration that we're kind of constantly dealing with.
So at this point, for point of order, I'd like to extend the meeting till 10 o'clock. So I would like to ask somebody.
I'll move that we extend the meeting till 10 p.m.
I'll second.
Alrighty, all in favor?
I just need one more.
I voted.
It's not showing up, sorry.
Yeah,
Oh, there it is, sorry, I'm sorry. It shows different here than it does up there.
So,
3 yes votes, Councilmember Messner and Allison absent, motion carries.
Chief Watson, did you want to contribute to that last statement? I saw you move up here.
No, that was just to extend the meeting.
Just wanted to get the procedural stuff out of the way.
Just real briefly, don't get into the weeds in the report on all the underlying causal factors behind homelessness. It is touched upon in a few different areas, including on page 2 under F5, where we talk, where it says tip the scale towards real solutions, we place more weight on resources like transitional housing, mental health services, and residential detox programs, thus reducing the need for law enforcement to manage the problem. So it doesn't talk about the national opioid epidemic as much, but it does touch on those are areas really if we're going to make any progress at all, we've got to find a way to address.
Thanks. Yeah, and I did highlight that and put yes beside that.
We could actually mention the fact that the city of Eureka is one of the plaintiffs in the big opioid litigation back in Cleveland. And, that we certainly recognize that as a foundational problem that is causational to homelessness and maybe even symptomatic of homelessness. So
I think it makes sense to include that, and recognizing that not all homeless individuals have opioid use disorder or use any opioids. But I think that makes sense to include that is one avenue, and perhaps even if you're at liberty to include some of the possible uses should we be successful in that litigation, that might be good to include. I just don't know at what point we can include anything about that.
yeah, I do think it's significant that the city of Eureka was proactive in getting involved in that litigation.
All right. Any other comments? Councilmember Begal.
So just one point of clarification, then I'll talk about my comments. But it is true that the bathrooms at the marsh were burned within like 3 days. But there is no proof that it was a homeless person, and there was a lot of antagonistic things happening at that time, and I think that also needs to be taken into consideration. We don't have any idea who did it. There were there was a lot of crazy stuff from the public happening to the homeless population down there, so we need to keep that in mind when we're talking about these things. So in response to this, I find it interesting that in F1, they say citation and arrest have never been a strategy of this city of Eureka. Oh no, and that is true. But in the grand jury report, that was the first thing that they said was law enforcement is not a strategy to reduce homelessness. And we have been saying that and trying to work away from that for quite a long time since Andy Mills was here. And I think that that's really important. It's not, unfortunately, it's not an overnight matter, and it's a balance that needs to be struck. And one of those balances was a while back, that people were allowed to sleep from 9 to 6. People are not, unless they're behaving irrationally or doing something, against the law, people are allowed to sleep from 9 to 6. 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. without the police coming to bother them. And I think that's really important. Just a couple other things. When it talks about law enforcement not being the go-to, what I would say, and my personal belief about this is that I appreciate is with a lot of these different community partners that we have in project like community services, the police department, the fire department, these people that have been working tirelessly, is that Eureka has a problem. And I appreciate that people are willing to step outside their regular job or their regular in-the-box solutions that they've always done and look for different avenues to reduce the symptoms of the problem and to support people into different ways of living by asking the question, by giving people the dignity and respect to make their own choices. That is something that I really appreciate. And there's a balance with that. I think, and it says here I really appreciated this in the findings, is that, yes, we need to be compassionate, but yes, we live in a society. And it's a conundrum, and it's circular. Because I could sit here and I could say, well, no one has a fundamental right to litter, and no one has a fundamental, to destroy public property and all of those things. And then I could sit over here on this other side and I could say, yeah, but where are they supposed to put their trash? What are we going to do about that? I mean, it's just like this circular kind of thing. And eventually I'm hopeful that we can get to a place where we can, put something in the wheel and stop it for a moment and actually move in a better direction in that regard. Because it is true, we all, as community members, have a responsibility to each other not to litter and not to, trespass on people's properties and all those things that are listed in here, not to run out in front of cars or those kinds of things. We all have to follow traffic laws, those kinds of things. So I think it's a balance, and it's a tough balance sometimes. And I just, I really, when reading the findings, I was, again, disappointed that they hadn't looked at any of the things the city was doing. I think they included the MIST program, but they didn't include all of the hard work that CSED is doing. The SEPDED team, they didn't include that. They didn't include Uplift. There's so many areas in our city that we are working to improve people's quality of life. And so that was a very, I didn't see that in the grand jury report. So I'm happy with the way this is written. I think it really speaks. It's very rich in fact of what we are doing, and I really appreciate all the hard work that went into this. And I think that's all I'm going to say for right now.
Councilmember Arroyo?
I just have one more clarifying comment that I was not trying to say that any one specific person or group destroyed the bathroom, but I pushed really hard for that darn porta potty, and it was really disappointing. And I remember we were pushing hard for that, and we had this Harbor District and City 2x2 committee where that was a big priority, and they were willing to pitch in. A partner was willing to pitch in, and we pitched in. And it was a small thing, but it really destroyed some faith in the idea that we could have these things and try doing them, and that they would be taken care of. And I know that we cannot blame unhoused people for that. And the same was true for little tiny grants I wrote to do environmental education on the waterfront. And okay, the porta potty was there for one day, and it got destroyed before the kids could even use it for these environmental education events. So recognizing that if we're going to do bathroom things, they have to be super well supervised and incredibly well designed, and there have to be people there all the time, and that's super resource intensive. So if people want to help us realize bathrooms, please do. I'm receptive. I just know that there needs to be a lot of monitoring, and our staff know that, and they tried to warn me, and I was like, no, we can do it. We can do this porta potty thing. Come on. And Miles is just laughing back there in the back of the room, like, I told you so. So anyway, that's something that I just want to say I remain open to, given the sort of partnership opportunities.
Okay. That does all the comments. Is somebody ready to make a motion?
I recommend we approve the city's response to the County of Humboldt Civil Grand Jury Report titled Les Miserables, dated July 8th, 2019. Direct mayor to sign and staff to submit response to presiding judge of the Humboldt County Superior Court.
I'll second.
All in favor?
3 yes, Councilmember Messner and Allison absent, motion carries.
Thank you very much. That was a long but important discussion, I think. So thank you guys. Our last, well, it's not our last, but we do have city manager report. Do you have something to report?
A couple of quick things, Mayor. First, Public Works Director Gerving wants to give a update on the Myrtle Avenue storm sewer project, and then I'll have something on the update on the housing element.
evening again, Mayor and Council. Had some questions from council members and obviously the public, and a lot of information has gotten out about this project, but we felt it was time to bring a little bit more comprehensive information before the council and kind of forecast what's coming up and how that will roll out. So over the past about 5 weeks now or so, you've seen a lot of activity in Myrtle Avenue. It started because of some quickly worsening sinkholes on Myrtle. There's been one in an existing location, which I'll show you in a minute, and another one that cropped up literally overnight that was very concerning. So we've done a lot of evaluation involving both city maintenance crews. It was a real team effort on the part of our streets crew and our sewer crew, and a lot of staff from engineering as well, to try to put eyes on what was causing the problem. We also hired a consultant to do some geotechnical work and ascertain the soils conditions there, which led us into what alternatives we might have to remedy the situation. We selected one, and we're going to discuss all those things plus the implications of the project, including the detour and the schedule. So if you travel Myrtle Avenue through the Cooper Gulch area regularly, you probably notice there's a sort of a pothole in the, we'll call it the southbound lane, the outbound lane of Myrtle. And it's been there for a number of years. It's gotten worse, and it's been filled, and then it'll appear again, and it'll be filled, but it's been manageable. Earlier this summer, there was a new sinkhole that developed in the northbound lane, and like I said, it got worse literally overnight. It was at first a very small sinkhole, and quickly after it had been patched, about a 3-foot by 6-foot area, about 18 inches deep, just collapsed. So for several reasons, that became really concerning. Traffic was immediately transitioned off of the hole so that we could put a lot of effort into ascertaining what was happening. As I mentioned, city utility crews use a lot of different techniques, some pretty creative ones, including boogie board and pool floats and all sorts of things to float our camera through this pipe because we couldn't dewater it completely. The interior of the pipe was cleaned, and we got some camera footage that showed that there's about 100-year-old unreinforced concrete pipe, the top of which has collapsed, and it's caused a lot of the material to come from the fill above and get into the pipe and be washed away. That's what caused that sinkhole to appear, and so we looked in the area at the geotechnical conditions and the underlying issues like the failure of that pipe. This particular area is very concerning for us, not just because of the traffic, 10,000 vehicles a day, it's about the 3rd busiest city street, but also because of very critical infrastructure in the area. There's a water line, which is typical of a city street. There's a gas line, which is typical of a city street, and there's also the crosstown interceptor. And that, in this area, is a 20-inch pressure sewer main that takes all of the flow from a good portion of the city plus Myrtletown and pumps it toward the wastewater treatment plant. So that was about 4 feet away from the sinkhole that you saw on the surface of Myrtle Avenue. And it's also about 12 feet above this old storm drain structure underground. If it failed, if anything compromised that, that would be a really serious situation. That's not something that can be shut off. The pumps cycle every couple of minutes, depending upon the weather. And failure of that would have really serious consequences. So we knew we had to avoid that. So we looked at what options we had to repair this existing storm drain. One would be lining the pipe, which would resolve the collapse issue, potentially, but would be difficult to do because we can't clean the pipe very well. And we also have a hydraulic issue in this area where the storm drain line isn't large enough to meet the design flows. We could have replaced the pipe in its existing alignment, which would have been much more difficult and much more expensive because of existing manholes, other utilities, and just the sequence of work would have been very difficult. We also looked at ramming new pipes under Myrtle Avenue. Because of the size of the lines involved here, that was cost prohibitive. So we settled on the preferred alternative, which is a 9-foot diameter corrugated aluminum pipe, and selected aluminum in this instance because corrugated steel pipe has about a 50-year life expectancy in the best conditions, and that wasn't going to be a feasible option here given the high volume of traffic, and we really wanted something with a long service life. So aluminum pipe is about twice that, and in 100 years, perhaps this issue will have to be dealt with again. In addition, rather than replacing the pipe in its current alignment, we're going to be installing a new pipe about 40 or 50 feet away from the existing one and opening up about 320 feet of upstream stream channel. We have to do some ancillary work like new outlets for shallow storm drains, and then once all of that's been completed, the existing storm drain system will be abandoned and placed, filled with grout, and should no longer be a problem. This is a picture, not a great one, of what the project will ultimately look like in very conceptual form. So you see the existing storm drain line along 8th Street going under Myrtle Avenue, and it's in total about 500 feet long. The new replacement pipe will be about 180 feet long and about 320 feet of new stream channel that will be excavated on the adjacent city-owned property. And I should note that while this property is part of the development agreement with Danco for the affordable housing complex, they hadn't planned on developing this parcel. It was just the adjacent one to the north. So the work that's happened so far is the first part of construction of the detour on the adjacent city property. We did that because it wasn't going to be feasible to do the two alternatives, which would be, number one, completely shut down the road and have 10,000 vehicles a day just fend for themselves and find another route, or to phase the construction in such a way that traffic could be maintained. It would really have slowed down the process in order to get this pipe installed before the wet season. Well, it's wet right now, but before the real wet season, we needed to give the contractor full access to that roadway. And because of the adjacent city-owned property, it was practical to construct a detour. It's going to be very slow speeds through there. It will be a traffic impact. We know and we hope that motorists that are familiar with the area will find other routes. Maybe they'll use West, maybe they'll use 14th, maybe they'll go all the way over to Harris, who knows. But this will be something that will take the vehicles that really have no other alternative. We also described this detour and the implications of it to the neighborhood, passed out a flyer to every house in the neighborhood, held a community meeting. There were 3 people who came. They asked very good questions. We had a really good conversation with them. We wished more people had shown up, but it is what it is. But our pipe is on order. We anticipate receiving that around the 1st of October, and we're not going to start the really intensive in-roadway work until after we see that pipe, because we don't want any reason to have problems with the project once it gets started. And once that closure on Myrtle Avenue starts, it'll last about 4 weeks and hopefully reopen in early November, and the rest of the project, like the excavation of the upstream channel, will continue after that date. All of this is going to be done, or is being done, under our emergency procurement provisions, which say that basically we may dispense with procurement process if there's an emergency. What's that definition of an emergency? It's any circumstances or conditions that pose an immediate threat to public peace, health, safety, welfare, personal or real property, or interests of the city or general public. And here, it's not just the traffic, but really it's our need to protect that crosstown interceptor, because if anything happens to it, we're in a world of hurt. Contracting is underway. We can't finalize that contract until after the plans have been finalized, and that should happen any day, and then we'll execute that contract. It will be done on a force account basis, but we've been working with the contractor, which is Mercer Fraser Company, to get a good idea of where the cost will come in, and it's looking at about 1.2 million, which is frankly better than we thought it would be originally. We were kind of thinking of worse numbers. So we're hopeful that we can come in somewhere in that neighborhood. It's going to be split between several different funds, sewer, water, and general fund. And the split is sort of flexible at this point. There's no doubt about the fact that it will be a hit on the general fund, but it's a stormwater system, and all of this really points to the deferred maintenance that's stacked up over the decades in the city, and we're trying to be more proactive, but there are really complex problems like this one that frankly the likelihood of ever getting them dealt with absent an emergency like this is really low. We've pursued grant funding in the past to do exactly what we're doing right now, and because it was just planning money then, the granting agencies weren't looking favorably on it. Now that we're doing this construction, that's like our foothold, and they are looking at this project as match for future upstream work, which could help us address some of the problems we know we have at 14th Street, for instance. So that's about it. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, Councilman Arroyo, and just so you know, we have like 3
Yes. So is this the culvert or the infrastructure that was limiting fish passage to the Cooper's Gulch area?
Yes.
What is that? Second slough? What
It's Cooper's Gulch.
Okay,
Or
but
Cooper's Canyon, depending upon which
it's
maps you look at.
like a tributary to one of the sloughs there.
Yeah, to the Eureka Slough.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right that this unfortunate circumstance could allow us to actually access Fisheries Restoration Grant Program funding or other funding for restoration of that area, which has been something that certainly came up with the Cooper's Gulch Common Grounds folks and in our own plans that we've developed collaboratively with those residents. So it's certainly something that could be used as a match for other objectives. So I like it. I mean, it's too bad we have to do it right this second, but we do.
Right.
Any other questions? Thank you very much for that report. And I know you are always brief, but we do have something you need to finish up.
Yes, so housing element, I think you may have seen, might recall about 2 months ago, former Director Holmlund brought a draft of the housing element to council. We're looking to bring that back around with some changes, joint meeting with council and planning commission. Really looking at 2 dates, both late September and late October. So I know the city clerk has put those dates out to council, and it's really pretty critical that we kind of meet these timelines. So again, as you said earlier, we do have a lot of different study sessions, work sessions kind of over the next couple of months. So
It's an exciting time. Thank you very much. We'll look for those. We have a minute. Does anybody have reports that they need to get done this time, or? Okay.
We just had a great day at Ross Park. We had a cleanup on Sunday. We partnered with Empower Eureka. The mayor was there. 30 people were there, little kids. They were so cute. We got a lot done. Hopefully, we'll get more community joining us next time.
It was amazing. Go ahead.
Very quickly, we've mentioned in this meeting and I think other past meetings about public transit, and I would love at some point a report from either someone within the city or community organization about kind of where we're at regarding different kinds of potentials for public transit in the future.
I could help give that, and then I imagine our staff could talk about the Eureka Transit Service Line, the study that's going on currently.
Just because we do have, it's going to be really thick for a while, could we look at this in December?
Sure, it doesn't
Okay.
need to be next week or a month or anything.
I just wanted to clarify because we got a lot of stuff coming up. All right. With that, the meeting is adjourned until tomorrow, where the public hearing will be continued. Right? All right.
Bye-bye.